Hello, everybody. We are going to get started pretty soon here. Everyone was muted upon entry just to make sure that there's no background noise or echo or anything like that, but feel free to unmute at any time to ask questions. I'm going to wait about, 2 or 3 more minutes to start the class just to let everybody get on and joined into the Zoom meeting here. So if you want to take a quick moment to make sure that you have your participant guide downloaded and opened up. This is what we're going to be using to follow along with in class today. So you can go ahead and turn CET on if you haven't already. I've got that running here as well. So you'll have CET and then also that participant guide. All right. Well, hello and welcome to Speedrack training in CET. So, welcome. Thank you for being here with me today. It does look like there are still going to be a few people trickling in here. So, I'm going to be admitting them as they join, but let's go ahead and get started today. All right. So, like I mentioned, we will be using the participant guide in class today. So, if you haven't already downloaded that, please make sure that you do that. Let me go ahead and pull up an example for you here to show you where you can find these things. In the Academy, where you found the link for today's class, this first section, this pre-work section, this is where you can find the downloads for the participant guide. So it's going to be this last one right here. So if you haven't already downloaded that participant guide, please make sure that you do that now. If you click on that line, you can click the download button, and that is how you can download that participant guide. We will be using this in class today and the next couple days. We are going to have some exercises, and then this is also for you to keep. So after you go through training today, you will be able to access these training videos again in the Academy. You'll be able to review them whenever you would like. And then you also get to keep this participant guide as a quick reference to come back to. In a couple months, if maybe you don't remember exactly how to use a specific tool, you can reference back to this participant guide and get those answers really quickly. All right. So, course objectives. The goal of our course this week is to learn how CET works. So, we're going to talk about the basic functions of CET. So, these are going to be core functions. So, that's things that are in every version of CET, okay? And those are going to be the functions that are going to allow you to do everything that you need to do in CET for drawing, specifying, and rendering. Now, this course does consist of live training all 3 days, and we're going to cover all of that core content. And then we are also going to do a section on the Speedrack extension itself. So not only are you going to learn all the core functions, well, not all of the core functions, but a lot of the core functions to get you going in CET. You're also going to be able to learn a bit about the actual Speedrack extension and how to use that as well. So using the core functions along with the Speedrack extension, you'll be able to create your drawings. Now we are doing this 3 days this week, and we are having this training for 3 hours each day. And we're going to have a short break approximately halfway through each day. Our timing here, it says that it was scheduled for 2 hours each day, but we're doing 3 hours each day. All right. So we are going to have a break about halfway through class, just depending on where we're at for our discussion and our different exercises and things. It might not be exactly halfway, but we will have a break each day. It's going to be between 10 and 15 minutes, enough time to grab a snack, get up, go to the bathroom, stretch your legs. Okay. Now, as we go through the participant guide, there are going to be links in the guide that will take you to different help articles, and those are going to help you to learn more about specific topics. And I will point those help article links out when we get to them. You will see them on the bottom right-hand corner when we get there, and I will point those out for you. Now, this last little note, CET is continuously updating with new features and functionality. One big thing to talk about with this is that we just came out with our 16.5 release. So if you notice that this right here, this was all built in 16.0, and we just had our 16.5 release. And so I'm going to talk to you about how you can find updated information and how we can kind of stay on top of things as we are getting these new releases. We do get a release twice a year. We get a minor and a major. So the next one that we're going to have is going to be in May, and that will be a major. So that will be 17.0. So you just kind of want to keep an eye on it. And I will tell you all of the things that have changed. If there's anything that's a little bit different than when I finished this participant guide up about a month ago. So there have been a couple changes for you guys. So we will go over those changes as well. But just know that it is always improving and we are always working on it. And so you kind of have to, you know, go with the flow a little bit. And just know that we are always improving and always building on these different features and functionalities. Okay, so here's what we're going to be doing for the next couple days. So day one, we are going to be talking about some basic stuff. So we're going to talk about MyConfigura, how to find your information about what's going on in the extension, when there are updates, how you can get that information, where you can see what's new and what's going on. We're going to talk about how to actually get those extensions and how to update your version of CET. Then we're going to dig into some preferences in the control panel. And then we'll start talking about some really basic functions. So how to see different things in CET, where some different tools are, and then how to actually start to bring things into the drawing space in CET. Then we'll work with changing those symbols, so adjusting them, copying them, positioning them. And then we'll get into the Tools tab, which has quite a number of features and functions. And then the last topic for today is going to be our PDF and AutoCAD import. All right, so scrolling down to the next page here, we're going to start with MyConfigura. All right, so MyConfigura is the website that you go to access all of your CET related information. So I'm going to go ahead and open up my browser here. Here we are. All right, so when you log into MyConfigura, so you can go to the Configura website, you can go to configura.com and it will take you to our landing page. On the top right, there's a MyConfigura button, and that will take you to MyConfigura. Now, mine will look slightly different than yours because I have a couple extra options because I am a configurant. So I'll have a couple extra drop downs here, but you will have most of what I have. Now, when you first go to MyConfigura, it's going to bring you to your dashboard, which is like your news feed for all things MyConfigura and CET. Now, every time that you download an extension on CET, you will automatically be added as a member of that extension's briefcase. So for Speedrack, if you download the Speedrack extension, you will be automatically added to their briefcase. And now what will happen is whenever there is any kind of communication from Speedrack that they would like to share with everyone who uses their extension, you will be able to see that showing up on your newsfeed. Okay, so on that dashboard. Now I've just clicked into the Speedrack extension briefcase to show you this. So here we go. These are the 16.5 updates. So we're going to talk about these a little bit later. But as I kind of scroll down here, you'll see that there's different communications for everyone who is joining. So be sure to check these out. This is all really good information. And as you continue to use CET, if there's specific communication from Speedrack, they can use these briefcases to give you that information. So you're always going to be on top of what's going on in this extension and in CET. So that is your dashboard. Okay. Now, this is going to show all of the different briefcases that you are a member of. I personally am a member of a bazillion briefcases because of my position here. You will have significantly less, but if you want to jump to something a little bit more quickly, when you are looking at these specific briefcases, you can actually favorite them. So I'm going to go back to the Speedrack extension here, and you'll see that it's got a star on the top right. If I click that star, it will turn black, and that means that I have made it a favorite. And that means that when I am in my MyConfigura area, any of these areas, on the right-hand side, I'm going to see my favorite briefcases. So here is that Speedrack extension in CET, so I can get to it really quickly. Now you can save these and you can like them. You can comment on these different things. So you can really communicate very well here in MyConfigura briefcases. Okay, let's talk about a couple other areas. MyConfigura is also where you can access your own information for your account. So you're going to see you're probably going to have a little profile picture like this, where it looks like just an outline of a person, right? If you have not yet added a picture to your account, that's what it's going to look like up here. So you'll find that little button. There's a drop down. You'll click the drop down, and then you can go to My Account. So this is where you can go to control your account information. You can add a profile picture if you would like. So you can click that edit button, add a photo here, and click save. You can also edit your name. So if for some reason you have a name change, you can adjust that really quickly here without having to create a new MyConfigura account. And same for the email address. If you happen to have an email change, you can come right in here and update your email address as well. Now, your account information area, this is also where you can find other information about your account. So your different invoices, if you're doing anything with invoicing, you can also find your different licensing information. So here are your licenses and extensions. One thing that I always like to point out here, though, is the notification settings. So if you click on notifications, this will list all of the briefcases that you are a member of. You probably are only a member of maybe one or two at this point, and that is okay. So it's a little bit more manageable. But what it does is this controls how many emails you're going to get with your different CET communications. If you have something selected here, you can choose to have an email sent every time that there's a new post, or every time that there's comments on posts that you have participated in, or you can have it send you an email for all activity. Okay, so if there's something that you want to really, really keep track of, send an email for all activity. If you find that your email inbox is becoming overwhelming and you don't want to see these emails for these briefcases, if you want to be able to just get into MyConfigura and browse there, you can turn the email notifications off within these notification settings. All right. So also in your MyConfigura page, I'm just going to go back to that MyConfigura page here. You've got some drop downs. So you've got your briefcases drop down. That's going to take you to your dashboard, or you can get into all of your briefcases. You're also going to have a support drop down. The support dropdown is going to give you access to the Help Center. It's going to give you a quick link to the Academy. So if you need to find any of these links again quickly, they're all right here for you. We also have access to the forum here as well. Now, no matter which of these dropdowns you're hovering on, you're also going to get this blue text to the right. So you can check out the different downloads available. You can check out the marketplace. This is where you go to download your extensions. And then down towards the bottom, there is this download CET button. So if you're maybe working on a different computer and you want to install CET on that computer, this is a good, quick way to do that. You've got that CET 64-bit right there that you can install. All right. Now, there are some other ways that you can access this as well. From CET itself, you're going to see your little picture icon up here. Again, it's going to be just that generic profile if you haven't added a picture. But if you click on that little bubble, you'll see your information and you can jump straight into your account area, straight to the dashboard, or straight to the marketplace from any of these drop downs. Okay, so few things that I want to do before we get into the marketplace. I do just want to show you the Help Center real quick because it is a very, very valuable resource for you. So from that support drop down, I'm going to click on the Help Center. You can also access the Help Center from within CET from the Help drop down. It's this first button right here, Help Center. Now, this is where all of our help articles are. And so if there's something specific that you're looking to find more information on, you can actually type it in right here. Maybe you want to learn about rendering. Okay, we can go ahead and type in whatever we're looking for, and then these will be all of the articles related to whatever topic you wanted to learn more about. And so these help articles will usually have some images, and sometimes they'll have little videos. It will talk you through whatever that topic is. So that's a really, really powerful resource to be aware of, that Help Center. Now, when we come into the participant guide, when we are looking at the different topics, you will see down here at the bottom, let me see if I can get rid of this. There we go. You'll have these little links down at the bottom right. They are in this light gray and they're a little bit difficult to see, but these are the help article links. So if I click on any of those links, it's going to take me directly to the help article related to that topic. Okay, so in the future, if there's something that we talk about here today, or maybe we don't get too deep into and you'd like to learn more about, feel free to explore the Help Center. And a good way to start is by clicking on the links here if there's something that you want to learn a little bit more about. Okay. So, in our participant guide, we'll have a topic. We'll talk about that topic. And then we're going to have a steps or a places page. And so this is just going to be a reference for you to come back to in the future. So if you want to find something again in the future, it's going to be really easy for you to find. So here are some places for you. This is the MyConfigura account, how you can find these different places and where to find those different things. Okay, so next thing we're going to talk about today is extensions and updating. So in the pre-work, I did ask that you download a few different CET extensions. So if you have not done that yet, we'll go ahead and talk about those now, and I'll show you where to find those. But I asked that you downloaded the Speedrack extension, characters, industrial equipment, and industrial marking and signage to take care of our class today. So the Speedrack extension is going to have all of the Speedrack product that's available in their extension, and there's also some tools available there as well. And then we do have our industrial equipment extension, and that has different accessories like vehicles and pallets and different things that you can put into your drawing that will not be actually specified. So these are just graphical additions to help build out your space. Characters are a good way to show a sense of scale in your drawing. Again, this is just a graphical addition to your space, but it is a nice way to kind of represent the scale of your space. And then the industrial marking and signage extension has signs, which can be very helpful. So if you want to add signs anywhere in your drawing, and then it also has all of the markings. So you can do things like forklift parking spaces, egress areas, crosswalks, and all of your different tape lines. All right, so let's go ahead and jump into the marketplace, and I will show you where you can find those different extensions. So I'm going to go from within CET. I'm going to click on my little profile button up on the top, and I'm going to use that last link here, which is the marketplace. Remember, you can also access that from your MyConfigura page. When you hover on briefcases or support, you'll get that text on the right, and one of those options will be the marketplace. Okay, so here we go. Here's the marketplace. We're going to go into material handling. And then from here, we have all of our different extensions. So up at the top, we've got some essential extensions. And then as we scroll down, we're going to see different manufacturer extensions. So right here, here is the Speedrack extension. If you have not yet installed the Speedrack extension, go ahead and hover over it, and your button will say install if you have not installed it yet. If you've already installed an extension, it will say uninstall. So that's a good way for you to know whether or not you've done it yet. All right, coming on down for accessories, we've got our characters. And then right next to that, we've got industrial marking and signage. And then in the building section, we have our industrial equipment. So once you have clicked install on all of those things, if you have not yet done that, once you click install, CET is going to automatically start downloading those things for you. It happens pretty quickly, depending on your connection speed and the size of what you're downloading. It can take a little bit of time, but it's going to run that all in the background for you. So you can continue working in CET if there's something that you're trying to accomplish, but you still want to install another extension in the background. That is totally okay. If you don't see any little download arrow, you can also click the help dropdown and then do a check for updates. And so that will force CET to look for any updates. You can click that little arrow if you have something that's updating, and it will give you the information about what it is actually installing. So if you are just now installing those extensions, you will see all of those extensions listed out here. And then once it is downloaded, you're going to get this blue bar that pops up. But instead of saying no new updates available, it will say that there are updates available. And it will give you an option to update and restart. So you do want to do that. You do want to click the update and restart button if you are ever prompted to do that. Now, this is also how the updates to the general versions of CET work as well. So let me go ahead and scroll down a little bit here. Here we go. So if you ever get an update like this is letting you know that you need to update and restart CET. Okay. When you change from 16.0 to 16.5, that's all going to happen in the background, and you will get a pop-up that looks like this that says, hey, there's updates available. Go ahead and update and restart. And that is how you can ensure that you always have the most up-to-date information that you're working with in CET. So CET is going to download all of these changes, all of these updates in the background. Whenever Speedrack has any changes to their catalog, if there's any updated information, that all gets pushed out to you automatically. You don't need to do anything extra for that. So that is a really, really powerful part of CET. They are able to communicate that, and they are able to send it out to all of the different people using that extension. Without you guys having to manually really do anything. You are going to get a little pop-up if there are any updates. Just go ahead and update and restart, and then you will have all of that updated, wonderful information. Okay, so this is going to bring us to our first exercise. So what I would like you to do is I would like you to make sure that you have your Speedrack extension installed, the industrial equipment, characters, and industrial marking and signage extensions all installed. Make sure that you have clicked that update and restart button from the pop-up. Once you get it, CET will shut down and restart. Occasionally, CET will not restart. So if you're sitting there and nothing is happening, go ahead and just open CET again. Occasionally, we will run into that little hiccup where it won't actually automatically restart, but the install and the updates will have taken effect. It just sometimes gets a little stuck on the restart, and they are digging into that right now. All right. So I'm going to give you a couple minutes to work on this. There are quite a few of us in our class today. So what I would like is I'm just going to have everyone who is still working on this, if everyone could just type in the chat, um, go ahead and add any kind of emoji or any kind of reaction or anything into the chat box to let me know that you still need a second to get your download going. Usually, typically for classes, I will just say, okay, is everybody done? But because there are so many of us here today and because this was part of the pre-work, I'm going to hope that most of you have it already done. Just go ahead and say, I need a minute or downloading if you do still need a little bit of time. So we'll go ahead and give a couple minutes for this. And if you still need time, go ahead and type into the chat box. Let me know that you're still working on it, and I will make sure that you get the time you need. Okay, let me know if you're having any issues, Greg. Um, if it's seeming to download for you, that should that should be all right. All right. For the industrial equipment, that one's going to be down towards the bottom in the building section, and it looks like a little robot arm. Oh, yep. Or you could type in the search bar at the top. That also works. Now we are going to get into our control panel preferences, but one thing that might be happening for you is in your update and network section of your control panel, you might have this allow automatic download of updates turned off. That could potentially cause a notice saying that your background downloader is off. But we'll dig into that in a second when we get into our control panel settings. Okay, so sometimes it does take a little bit of time for CET to actually update. So if you want to give it a little nudge, you can do that help drop down, check for updates, and it will give you the information right here about what is still being installed and approximately, its progress. And then once it's all installed, then you will get this pop-up. Sometimes it does take a little bit of time. Like I said, depending on your connection speed, this may take a little while, especially if maybe it's an older version of CET. Sometimes if you're doing a big major update, that can take a little bit of time as well. But um, we got to just be a little bit patient with it. But if you want to give it a little nudge, you can do that. Help check for updates. Now, once you have done your updates and you have restarted CET, that's when you're going to be able to actually see the extensions that you downloaded. Now, I have way more extensions than you're going to have, again, because of my position. And so my version is going to look a little bit different than yours, but you will not see any of these extensions until you actually download them. So we've got our industrial equipment extension. We've got our industrial marking and signage, and we've got our characters, and we've also got the Speedrack extension. Now, I have added these as favorites. We'll talk about that as well. But if you want to add something as a favorite, you'll see that there's a big list of things here, all of these different extension tabs. They all have a star off to the very far right. And if you hover on it, you can see that it says pin. If I decide to pin any of these, they will show up at the top of my list and become really, really easy for me to find. So I'll go ahead and just remove a bunch of the stuff that we're not going to be using here. Go ahead and do that for today. There we go. Interesting. Okay. Well, that's all right. We'll go ahead and give it a little bit of time. Um, We're not going to be using that one immediately today, so that should be fine. It is going to be a really good one for you to have later on. Again, that's just it's all just graphical additions to your drawing, so things that are nice to have, but they're not a must have. So no emergency there. Try again and just let it think, give it some time. Sometimes it just takes some extra time. I'm sure the gentleman from the original Speedrack training course can tell you sometimes it takes a little bit of extra time for some people to get these things downloaded and updated. Okay, so let's go ahead and continue on. And for those of you who are still updating, that's okay. We're going to go ahead and start digging into the control panel. If you haven't gotten that update and restart prompt, that's okay. Just wait for it. When it does appear, go ahead and do that when you have just a moment, whether it's at our break or something like that. When we talk about our control panel, we're not going to really need any of those different things, nor are we going to need them for views and navigation. So at any time during the next couple topics, don't worry about needing those specific extensions. Once we get through these few topics, when we start to dig into the actual functionalities and things, that's when we're going to really kind of start needing those extensions. But for now, go ahead and let things just update as they will. And then when you get that prompt to update, go ahead and click that update and restart button and just continue on that way. Okay. One last thing, Greg, if you need to, you can try clicking the uninstall button on the marketplace and then clicking the install button again. Sometimes that'll give it a little nudge in the right direction. Okay. So let's go ahead and talk about the control panel. Now, the control panel is where you are going to set your preferences for CET. And the beautiful part about this is that every time that you use CET, CET is going to remember all of your preferences. So you're logging in to this session as yourself. And so all of your preferences are going to be specific to you. Okay. So even if you open up somebody else's drawing, you're still going to have all of your preferences saved. So however you prefer to work. So now we're going to access the control panel by clicking on the File drop down. And then almost all the way down at the bottom here, we've got the control panel. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and click on the control panel. All right, let's go ahead and start up towards the top. And we'll go over a couple of the major settings that are really important to kind of talk about. So the first thing that we're going to talk about here is the general tab. So these are going to be some general preferences. When we are first getting into this, a couple things that are really nice to know about are the angle step. So the angle step determines your degree of rotation within CET. So I'm going to go ahead and just show you an example here. Don't worry about following along at this point. This is just kind of a demonstration of what this angle step does. When I bring something into CET, so for example, this is a wall. When I go to place this wall, my angle step is set to 45 degrees. That means that as I'm placing this wall, it's going to snap to every 45 degrees. So this makes it really easy for me to make walls in a very straight line. Okay. Same will be true for when you are putting in your racking systems. If you need to work in kind of a very linear manner here, this makes it really easy to do that. If I have my angle step set to none or to something really low, when I go to add this in, you'll see that it's snapping to every 1 degree, which can make it really difficult to place things directly in a specific direction, whether it's straight up and down or left to right. It can be really difficult to kind of wiggle things into the right position. There are ways that we can kind of work with that, but the easiest thing for yourself is to set your angle step to something that's a little bit higher. I find that 45 degrees works wonderfully well for most people. So this is not only while you are placing things, but it is also the degree of rotation when we go in and we try to rotate items in CET as well. Now, there are ways to override that. So if we need a very specific degree, we can either type it in on the top or we can hold down the shift key to unlock that. But for just the general workability, for our general preference, setting this to 45 degrees is a great idea. If you find that the way that you work and the projects that you work on most often, you might want to have either a 90 degree or maybe you want a little bit less, maybe a 15 degree, whatever works best for you. It is good to know what this degree of rotation does, this angle step option does. This is one that will save you a ton of time instead of trying to finagle with it. You can have it just snap right where you need it to be. Okay, down in the general section below that, a couple things that are really good to know about. This bottom option, enable multiple drawings, I highly recommend that you turn that one on. This allows you to have multiple drawings open within CET. So if I come over here and I click this new drawing button, this will give me a new blank drawing, and I will have a drawings drop down, and I can toggle between my drawings. So this is a great way to copy and paste things from one drawing into another. So maybe you've got, something that you want to have copied into a new drawing. This is the way to do that. This is also great for maybe you're in the middle of a project, but you just need to check something on another project real quick. You can open up that other project and work with these multiple drawings this way. Now you can have up to 5 before it will start to kind of gripe at you. You can open more than that, but it will give you a warning that probably CET is going to slow down. So maybe you want to close some drawings. You can control these different drawings by clicking on the one that you want to be in. So this is new drawing 3. It will tell you how many drawings are actually open up here at the top. And you can choose to close these different drawings by going to the File and the Close button. Or if you want to just have one drawing that you're working on and close everything else, just make sure that you're on that drawing that you want to keep open and then click this Close All Other button, and it will close everything else out for you. So that's that Enable Multiple Drawings. Now, you will not have a drawings dropdown if you do not have Enable Multiple Drawings turned on. One other thing that I like to mention here is this preview prices. This is handy for if you're doing any kind of live design with a customer. If you want to actually show them something while you're working in CET, this will turn off the dollar amount up here. So what you're seeing up here is the calculations, and this is our list price. And so sometimes that can be not such a great thing to show because people will kind of panic a little bit because usually we've got some kind of discounting going on. So usually what we're seeing is not actually the price that they're going to pay. But if you happen to be doing some kind of live design with your customers, it is a good idea to turn the preview prices off just to kind of forego any of that sort of potential misunderstandings or panic. Okay, I'm going to keep mine on. I don't do any kind of live design. I don't work with those types of customers. So I'm going to go ahead and keep mine on as my preference. Okay, let's go ahead and go down to region. Now, this is another really, really important tab. Um, Configura is a Swedish company. Okay, so we are going to have a lot of European defaults here in the control panel, and when we get into some other places as well. So typically when we come in here, you're going to see that this is set for a metric distance unit. And so if you would like, you can come into the region tab and you can adjust your currency to something that makes sense to you for your customers. And you can also adjust your distance unit. So I like to work with feet and inches. This will give me a decimal if I have something that is, under an inch, it will actually give me that decimal point. If you choose to have feet, inches, and fractions, it will give you the fraction instead of the decimal. Some folks like to work in only inches, depending on how you are specifying and how you want to complete your drawings. Go ahead and set your preference here in the distance units. One of the most common questions that we get is, how do I change out of meters? How do I make it show me feet and inches instead of centimeters? This is how you do that. Okay, it is also a good idea to check your date and time format just to have it be something that makes sense for you. Um, Again, sometimes this will be set to the European format where it's the day and then the month and then the year. So just double check that this is set for something that makes sense for you. Okay, in the Views tab, one really important one to show you here, there's lots of really good stuff that you can really dig into. And if you check out the help article will talk to you about all of these different things. We don't have enough time to go over each and every one of these options here. But the major thing on this tab is going to be this keep dialogues on same screen. Okay, you want to make sure that this is checked on. Now, a dialogue is a pop-up window like this. Okay, real quick, Greg. So the show metric unit for ruler, if we use our ruler tool here, on our toolbar, if we have that turned on, it will show that metric distance for the ruler. So if I turn that off, then I'm just going to get my regular. But if I use my ruler tool, then I can swap it to be a metric distance depending on my styles that I set up for those rulers. I'm going to go ahead and turn mine off because I don't actually want any metrics. All right. So again, this enable or keep dialogues on same screen. Right here, keep dialogues on same screen. So a dialogue is this pop-up window. So whenever you get any of these pop-up windows, it's going to show up on the same screen as CET. So a lot of us work with multiple monitors or, a laptop and an additional monitor, something like that. Something that will occasionally happen is a pop-up will come up and it will show up on a different screen. And if you have this turned off, and that can be a little bit frustrating because a lot of times that will happen and you will have no idea that something has popped up and CET is waiting for your input. So it will look like CET has frozen, but really what's happened is one of these windows has popped up and they like to pop up behind Outlook or behind Teams, that kind of thing. So you don't even see them. So maybe it's waiting for you to answer a question or to click an OK box or something like that, and you can't do anything else in CET until you've answered that prompt. It can be really frustrating. So save yourself the frustration. Click on this Keep Dialogues on Same Screen. That will force the dialog boxes to pop up on the same screen as CET. Now, once these have popped up, feel free to move them out of the way. If you have multiple monitors, you can scoot them wherever you want to scoot them. Same thing, like if we open up calculations, this will now pop up on the same screen as CET. Um, but then we can just scoot it away if we want to do that. So that one's a really good one to keep an eye on, that keep dialogues on same screen. Now, we do have a couple new things that have happened with 16.5. One thing that happens now is we have this highlight component under cursor. And so when we hover over something, it will actually show us what we're about to select. It will highlight that for us. So those of you gentlemen that took my original training, this is new for 16.5. So this is a new option. It should be defaulted on, but if you notice that new behavior, that is what's happening. So if you don't like that, you can turn that off. It is optional. This was the behavior prior to 16.5. When you hover, nothing happens. But now we have this highlight component under cursor, and that will actually show you what you're about to click on. Okay, moving right along, let's talk about graphics. So for our graphics tab, this is where you can find your graphics card information for whatever computer you are using. This is going to be important for if you are trying to determine if your machine is going to be powerful enough to really run CET effectively. We do have some resources about required um, hardware specifications, recommendations for you, and those are available here. If you click on this link right here, that will take you to the help article that talks about it. And so this recommended is kind of what you want to be shooting for. But if you can get something that's a little bit higher, that's going to run CET even better. But this is kind of what you really want to be shooting for. If you're running kind of the minimums, this is good for very small projects, but CET might start to slow way down if you're trying to do anything a little bit bigger. And so what you can do is you can use that graphics card information here to figure out what your benchmark score is by using those hardware specification recommendations here. You can find your benchmark score. You can just Google the name of your graphics card, all of that information, and just Google benchmark score. There's plenty of information on finding what that benchmark score is for that specific graphics card. But if you're looking to see kind of what you need to run CET, this is where you can find that information. And within CET, you can find your graphics card information right here. So if you're not comfortable digging around in your own computer settings and kind of figuring it out that way, this is a good way to see just really quickly what you've got. All right. The other thing down here in the settings area. So first of all, you should always be running in hybrid mode. If you are running in software mode, that means that you're not using your graphics card and you're not going to be able to do really anything in 3D. CET is not designed to be used in software mode. And so if right now, if you look at this and you're in software mode, that's a pretty good indicator that maybe the computer that you're using is not appropriate for running CET. All right. Now, I do also want you to check that your enable smooth textures is off and your enable real-time lights are off. Both of these things are going to cause CET to work a lot harder than it really needs to, and it's not going to make a huge amount of difference. Right now, I've got my enable smooth textures off. If I turn it on, you will see that I've got a very, very slight change in how things look here, but it is very, very minimal. Looking at kind of like the jagged edge here these textures. You can see it's just a very, very slight change. Um, all that this is for what it looks like while you are designing. And ultimately, that really doesn't make a huge difference for us, right? What we want is a really quick, good result without blowing up our computers, right? So let's turn these both off, and that will allow CET to run a little bit quicker. Okay. The last tab that we're really going to dig into is this data management tab. Now, this is where you can set your auto backups and your auto saves. An auto backup is going to be a drawing that's hidden that you can dig into and access if you need to revert to an older version of a drawing. And then that auto save is going to be just a save that automatically happens for you. So you don't have to physically come up and click the save button. It's going to auto save for you. Now, when you are choosing how many auto backups you want and how many auto saves you want, and then how often you want it to auto save, just know that the higher the number is for the number of backups and number of auto saves, the more space it's going to take up on your computer. So if you don't have a ton of storage space on your computer, I'd recommend keeping these kind of on the lower side. But if you're not worried about space at all and you are really concerned about losing any kind of time that you've spent working, you can bump those up. I find that keeping these kind of on the lower end, so my range here is between 1 and 50. I keep mine at 5. That seems to work fine for my storage needs. But again, the number of drawings that you're working with all the time can also have a major effect on this. If you're someone that only works on maybe, a handful of really large projects, maybe not such a big deal. But if you're someone who's working on 20 projects a day and you're doing lots of little projects, this might be a little bit more, you might want this to be on the lower end. So you're not using a ton of space on your computer. Okay. So auto backups and auto saves. I do recommend if you decide not to use your auto backups, that's okay. If you do anything here, make sure you're doing your auto saves just to save yourself any kind of grief. Occasionally CET may shut down, or maybe your computer freezes or something happens, right? Things always happen. And you don't want to lose a bunch of work. So have your autosave set up so that way you're saving occasionally. I don't ever want to see someone work for a couple hours and then lose all of that work that they've done. So if you do nothing else here, just make sure that you turn on your autosave, and you can even set it to 1. So it's only overwriting just that one file. That will be minimal space on your computer, and give yourself that autosave occasionally. Okay. Now, the thing with the control panel is that as I make changes in the control panel, they are automatic and they stay that way until I change them to something else by coming in here and changing it to something else. So I don't have like an OK or an apply button or anything. When I make changes, they are automatically applied. So I can go ahead and close out of the control panel, and that is what my preferences are set to until I change them to something else. All right. Our next topic is going to be views and navigation. All right. Oh, real quick, control panel. So if you want to dig into more options with the control panel, we do have the help article listed there. And if you want to go back and you want to review some of these different options, we also have that available. So here are a few of the things that we talked about. And now we are continuing on to our views and navigation topic. Okay, so this is going to be a quick lay of the land where things are in CET, and then how to kind of move around in the program. All right. So here we go. So when you open up CET, it's going to look something like this. We do have an automatic floor that comes in. This is adjustable. You can turn it on or off, but typically this is what CET is going to look like when you first start. You're going to have a blank spot up here, and then you're going to have some kind of gray square down in the bottom. Now this top area is your 2D drawing view, and this bottom area is your 3D drawing view. Now they each have a toolbar above them. So this is going to be your 2D toolbar, and then this is your 3D toolbar. If you want to toggle between these views, we do have these toggle switches down at the bottom. So if I click 2D, it's going to give me a full screen of my 2D view. If I click 3D, I'll get a full screen of my 3D view. And then this two views button is going to give me this split screen view. I can also adjust by hovering in the center. I'll get this double-sided arrow. I can left click and drag to adjust how much space I'm giving to each of those within that split screen view. So if I want mostly 2D and a little bit of 3D, I can do that. Whatever makes sense for you, you can drag it and add it wherever you want it. Now, when we want to move around in CET, I'm going to go ahead and bring a character in just so we have something to look at here so we can see what's happening when I navigate. Okay. So when you want to move around in CET, there's a couple different ways to do that. The first thing you can do is you can zoom, and you're going to do that with your mouse scroll wheel. So I'm just using my mouse scroll wheel and I'm going up and down, and that's allowing me to zoom in and out here in my 2D view. Now I can also do this in my 3D view. So wherever I want to zoom in, I can just hover and then use my mouse scroll wheel to zoom in or out. Now, whatever I'm hovered on is what I'm going to zoom in on. Okay, so if there's something that you want to get a really good look at, just hover your mouse there, and then you can zoom to that point. Okay, so there's zoom. The next form of navigation is pan. And to pan, you're going to hold down your mouse scroll wheel like a button. And while you're holding it down, you're going to drag in whichever direction you would like to get that different view. So let's say that I had a very large drawing. I could zoom out and then pan and then zoom back in somewhere else. So using that pan ability allows us to really see the whole drawing. We can also do this in the 3D view. So if I pan here, I can pan in any direction, okay, to get whatever kind of view we need to have in that 3D view. Now, the last form of navigation is orbit. And to orbit, I'm going to hold down my right mouse button and drag. And this only works in the 3D view, but this allows me to see all of whatever I have in that 3D view. Okay, so I can drag it around to any kind of orientation here. Now, real quick, I did want to mention one other thing with views and navigation. We do have this other camera view available. So right now we're working in perspective view, which will sort of distort our view to make it look a little bit more realistic. But we can change to an orthographic view. So I can left click on perspective here. That will open up my 3D navigation box, and I can click on orthographic. And then I can swap to these different views if I would like. So if I would like a top down or a front view, I'm going to be able to do that and get those different views, and it's not going to have any distortion. So this is going to come into play when you are looking at racking, especially when you've got a larger project. If you're looking at a side view of racking in the perspective view, sometimes it will look kind of angled to the sides, and that can make measuring between spaces a little bit difficult. However, if you pop into the orthographic view, it will give you a true to life measurable view of that particular drawing. So I'm going to go ahead and pop back into my perspective view, and I'm going to click the perspective button one more time to make that little box go away. I'm going to continue working in perspective view for now. Once we get some actual racking in, once we go through the racking or the Speedrack extension, we'll kind of look at how that's going to work again. But just so you know, you do have that extra camera view available to you. Okay. While we're talking about views, let's go ahead and talk about these different view modes down at the bottom. Now, these are going to change depending on which extension you have active. So if you are in your walls extension, you're going to have some different view modes than when you are in your Speedrack extension. Now, these different view modes are going to change what you're seeing. So again, we're going to dig into this when we look more at the Speedrack extension. But for a good example of this, we're going to go to that walls tab, and I'll show you these different things here. So if I have some architecture in my drawing, so let's just say that I have a wall, so doors, windows, walls, that all counts as architecture. If I click on my architectural view mode, it's going to take everything away from my drawing that I'm able to see, except for those architectural items. Now, everything still exists. This is just a camera view that I'm seeing. So if I go back to my normal view mode, I will be able to see everything in my drawing again. But this is going to control what I'm seeing. So sometimes we might want to only see our CAD plans. Sometimes we might only want to see the architecture. Depending on what we want to see and what we want to work with, we can adjust those different views by using those view modes. Now, all of your extension tabs are going to show up here in a string on the left. If you happen to have a ton of extensions, if you download a bunch and they don't all fit here, this is a scrollable area, so I can use my mouse wheel to scroll. You'll see I have a bazillion different extensions, and so I have to scroll to see all of mine. But you can navigate them this way. Probably you're not going to have that problem, but if you end up with that problem in the future, just know that you can use your mouse wheel to scroll to see all of those different extensions. Like I said, you can also favorite them by clicking on the star, which will pin it to the top. And if you do decide to pin an extension, you can actually left click and drag it. So you can put them in an order that makes the most sense for you, maybe which ones you use most often, something like that. And then when you close and reopen CET, all of your favorite extensions are still going to be saved up here at the top in that particular order. So that can be a really nice way to kind of save yourself some time. Instead of trying to dig around in these other extensions, you could just favorite the ones that you use all the time. Okay, all of the information for whichever extension I select is going to be off to the left. So if I click on the Speedrack extension, I will see all of my Speedrack extension information off to the left. If I click on my tools, I will see all of my tools information and so on. So whichever one of these I select, it's going to change whatever is happening to the far left. And so that's all of the extension information for whichever one I have selected. Okay, the next thing that I want to show you, the next area is calculations. So that's going to be this button on the top right. It will either say calculation if you've turned off that preview price, or it will say $0, or it might have some dollar value if you've got any kind of product in your drawing. You can go ahead and click that, and that will open up your calculation dialog. This is going to be your list of all of your different line items, things that are being sold within your drawing. Now we can control this quite a bit. We're going to get deeper into that later on in training. But for right now, it's important for you to know how to access it, just kind of know where it lives. It will open in its own dialog. You can extend it out so you can make it full screen if you want, or you can even adjust it and make it smaller, whatever works for you. So you can kind of control how you want to see this. All right, to close out of calculations, I'm just going to click the X there. There we go. Now, the next area that I want to show you is the paper view. So I'm going to go down to paper. And when I come into my paper view, you'll notice that I do also have a Speedrack paper. And then I've got a couple core tools as well. So I've got tools and I've also got drawing. And so these are just different ways that we can add things to these papers and different tools that we can use for those papers. And then we have some specific Speedrack paper tools as well. Now that was that paper button down on the bottom right. If I want to go back into my drawing views, I can click on any of these three toggle buttons. I can do my 2D, my 3D, or my 2D view, or my split view. So I'll go ahead and click on that one. All right, now the last area to show you, the last main area is going to be Photo Lab. And this is going to be where you're going to create all of your renderings. So you can access Photolab by clicking on this little film strip and beaker icon up on the top right. That will also open up a new window. This can also be resized. So you can make it maximized or you can resize it depending on how you want to work. But this is where you're going to set up your different photos and then set up your different settings and work with these different renderings and create your renderings. To close out of the photo lab, you can go ahead and click on the X on the top right. All right. Now we talked a little bit about this help drop down before. for that check for updates. There is also a quick link to what's new in 16.5. So these are going to be what's new with all of our different core functions. So as you are using CET, you can always stay up to date with what's going on with all the CET core functions by checking out that help drop down and just seeing kind of the what's new um, options that are available. So for example, this is 16.5. You can go ahead and click into here to see what all has changed, what's new, and it will give you the help article for all of that. So that's kind of a nice thing to know about. Now you can also access the Help Center from here. The Help Center, again, is where you're going to find all of those help articles. The other thing that's important to know from here is that you can click this Need Help, Click Here button, and this will connect you to support. You can, this is ConnieBot, but you can ask ConnieBot to talk to a human, and that will connect you to our support team. So we do have a global network of support folks, and so someone will be available for you 24 hours a day, Monday through Friday, is their availability. So please feel free to reach out to them if you're having any kind of issues with CET. It's a really great tool that we have available. Okay, other drop downs here. All right, we have our file drop down. When we click on that file button, it's going to give us some standard options. So new, open, save as, some pretty standard options here. We've got an info tab, and then we've got a recent tab. Recent is really, really wonderful because you can quickly jump into drawings that you have been in recently without having to dig into any kind of file explorer. So it will list all of your recent drawings. So let's say that you just want to double check on something that you had worked on 3, 4 drawings ago, you can jump straight back into it by clicking on it in this list. I don't have any recent drawings showing right now, but as you start to work on drawings, they will appear in this list. Okay, to get back to your drawing, if you've clicked on that file button and you want to go back to your drawing, just go ahead and click on the file button one more time, and that will take you back into your drawing. We've got lots of other tools available. We're going to go over a bunch of this stuff together in training, but just know that you have a ton of functions and features available to you within these different drop downs. If you're ever curious about how to use one of these tools or functions, feel free to check out that help article. Feel free to reach out to me. This is an extremely robust program, and so there's a ton that it can do. So it depends on how much time you really want to spend exploring and getting used to these different tools. I'm going to take you through the most important ones in our training this week. But if you are curious, feel free to explore those on the help articles. Okay. Um, Occasionally, I will show you the keyboard shortcut for things here in the participant guide. So for example, for calculations, if you wanted to get into it, instead of clicking on that button, you can also press F9 on your keyboard. That will open calculations for you. Same thing for Photo Lab. If you want to open up Photo Lab, you can use the keyboard shortcut F2 to pop that open instead of having to click the button. All right. So we've talked about our file menu. Last thing to talk about here is the clean start menu. So clean start is something that you can use if CET has given you some grief. If it seems like things are not working how they're meant to work, sometimes a clean start will help that. If you chat into support for some kind of problem, almost always they will ask you, have you run a clean start? It's sort of like our version of have you turned it off and on again? This is a good place to start. You're going to find your clean start menu from your file explorer. Okay. And so that's going to be from your Windows search bar. You can search in your Windows search bar to find this. Let me go ahead and just swap my screen here so you guys can get a good visual of how I'm finding it. Sometimes it can be a little bit confusing to see this. Let's go ahead and share this other screen. Here we are. Okay. So down here in my Windows search bar, I'm just going to type in clean for clean start. Okay. So when I type in clean, I'm going to find this CET, clean start or recover. So there is my clean start window. Okay. I'm going to ask that you guys not actually do this right now because this is going to turn CET off and turn it back on again. I'm not going to actually run a clean start, but use this if you ever experience any problems. This will a lot of times alleviate those problems. Um, I like to talk about it sort of like I know everybody's experienced this with their printers where all of a sudden your printer will just not work properly anymore. And it's just, it's not connecting or suddenly it just it confuses itself. It's sort of the same thing where if you just turn it off and turn it back on again, it will refresh itself and kind of fix itself. Same thing for these CET clean starts. Sometimes there's some kind of process that's running in the background that maybe just needs to be stopped for a moment. It will run a little mini defrag on CET, and then it will usually fix any kind of small problems that you might be having. So that is a good tool to know about. Okay, so again, it's kind of important to know kind of where to find that CET clean start. So again, that's from your Windows search bar. Um, You can type in, you can search for CET, but that will give you the program along with the clean start. So I like to just type in clean and clean will get you there. Okay, so here are some other areas in CET, a reference for as you are working in CET, kind of how to get into those different areas, kind of when we're talking about certain things, if you're talking about your view modes or your toolbars, where we are talking about when we are talking about these different areas. Okay, so on to our next exercise. What I would like you guys to do is to please have a new blank drawing open in CET. If you've got CET open, kind of like I do, maybe let's say that you've just been kind of following along with me and you've got something like this. That is great. Let's go ahead and save this. And we're going to save it as exercise. Okay, and this is going to be the drawing file that we're going to use for the next couple days to do all of our exercises in. So to save a drawing, you can either click on this Save Drawing button, or you can go to your File dropdown and you can do a Save or a Save As. And then from there, just choose where you want to save it, give it the name, and click Save. Okay, so the floor um, might be somewhere else in your drawing. It's possible that it is just not somewhere that you can see it currently. But the floor also does have options to turn on or turn off. And the default is for the floor to automatically expand to wherever you are. So what I'm going to have you do is when we get to our next topic of placing symbols, that's when we're going to find out if you actually have a floor on or not. Okay, Craig? Because wherever you put it in the 2D view, it will automatically expand out to that. And then if it's still not on, then I'll show you how to dig into your options for your floor. All right. Does everybody have their file saved as exercise? Give you just a moment to do that if you have not. Okay, so real quick, when we get into placing symbols, we are going to be using the industrial equipment extension. So is there anyone who has not been able to access that? Is there anyone who's still waiting on a download for that? Greg, did yours finally go through? Okay, we're going to say no news is good news. All right, beautiful. Okay, so let's talk about how to place symbols in our drawing. Ah, interesting. Okay, all right. You may need to run a clean start, Greg. Okay, so this is how we can actually put things into our drawing. So for this, we're going to use our industrial equipment extension to play around with a few things and kind of see how these different things work. Okay, so in CET, I'm going to find my industrial equipment extension. I'm going to left click on it, and it will populate all of the things that are available in this extension for me. When I want to bring something into my drawing, I can click on whatever symbol I want to bring in, and then I can put it into my drawing. So let's go ahead and start with a palette. I'll just go ahead and pick this palette. So I'm going to left click on it. Now it's on my cursor. I can place it either in 3D or in 2D. It doesn't matter. I can left click in my drawing to place it. And then you'll notice that I still have a copy of that thing on my cursor. And now this is going to be true for most of the functions in CET, whether it's a symbol or a tool. Most of the time, it's going to continue creating copies or continue having that tool active until you manually excuse it. So you can do that two ways. You can either press escape on your keyboard, or you can swipe left past your extension tab area, and that will free up your cursor. Okay. Now, as I'm doing that, I'm going to do one more. So I'm going to left click, and I want you to notice as I have this on my cursor, I also have a little green box that pops up. Okay. This is my quick properties box. It's going to pop up in whichever view I'm placing something in. So if I'm placing something in my 3D view, my quick properties will appear here in my 3D view. And if I'm placing something in my 2D view, it's going to show up here in my 2D view. Now, before I place something, these quick properties are actually called animation properties. And sometimes there are options available before you place something that are not available after you place it. So it's always really important to look at what is in your quick properties. You will get to know which properties are going to be the ones that you're going to need to change frequently, and you will get to know those with your different products and with your different tools. Especially when you are first learning CET, always pay attention to these quick properties. Now, for example, for this particular palette, I can change the size. So maybe I want this to be a 3x3. I can go ahead and type those in. So if I select from my option here, I can either left click into the box, or I can press my tab key to choose a row. Then I can type in a value. So let's say that I wanted this to be 3 feet. Then I can press the tab key to get to my next row, type in 3 feet. And then if for some reason I wanted this to be at a different elevation, I could set that elevation here as well. Maybe I want this to be a foot in the air for some reason. Okay. Now when I left click to place it, it has all of those properties already applied. Okay. So now it's a 3x3 that's a foot in the air. Okay. Now, when I go to select that palette, you'll see that I still have the ability to change the length and the width, and I do have the ability to change the elevation, but now I've got different options. Okay, so with these palettes, one thing that's really cool on them is they have a generate boxes button. Again, this is one of the reasons why you always want to explore those quick properties, because some symbols have some really cool tools that are kind of hidden within those properties. So I can click this generate boxes button, and it's going to let me add some boxes. So I can choose what kind of boxes I want. I can choose how many layers and whether or not I want overhang. Click apply, and it will actually put those boxes right on that palette for me. So there are some really cool things that our different symbols can do. So always feel free to explore those quick properties as you are placing and after you have placed items in your drawing. Okay. So once again, real quick recap. You're going to left click on the symbol you want. You can place it as many times as you want. Maybe we want a whole bunch of copies of these, something like this. Okay. And then when you're done, you can either press escape or swipe left past the extension tab to free up your cursor. Your quick properties, you can use the tab key to go through those different rows. You can also use the space bar to swap through different columns. So if there's a property that has different check marks, like different options available within the same row, you can use the space bar to swap through those. Or if it's a drop down, you can use the space bar to flip through those different drop downs. If it's a checkbox or something else, you can use the space bar to select or unselect. So if I click my space bar here, it's going to open up my generate option. Let's see if we've got something with a couple other properties. Let's see. Not a lot of properties for those guys. Okay. I'll go ahead and call that out, the spacebar part again, when we find something that has a little bit more options for columns here as well. But that tab key and the spacebar are going to be how you can move through those different areas. You can also use the shift key with those to go the opposite direction. So if I've got a whole bunch of properties that I'm tabbing through, if I miss the one that I want, I can actually hold down shift and tab to go the opposite direction. Okay, same is true for that spacebar. Now, if you're working and you want to select something because you want to be able to move it around or work with it in some way, and it's the quick properties are in your way, you can choose to hide them. You can click this little hide quick properties button and it will show it for you again, or you can actually move it around. So if you want to left click and drag it, you can actually hover on the top until you get that four-way arrow and then left click and drag. Now, while you're doing this, it may need you to hold down the shift key to override your snapping. Sometimes it wants to snap to specific spots. You'll see that it wants to snap to the left there for me. But if I want to place it maybe right there, so it's out of my way, I can do that. If I want to redock it to the corner, I can just click that little green button in the corner and that will put it right back to where I had it before. Now, this is all also available in the 3D view as well. You can move it around and redock it, and you can also hide and show those properties. All right. Now, when you have freestanding items, so just regular items here in your drawing, let's go ahead and add another one of these. You'll see that as things get close to one another, if they are able to, they will snap together. So you'll see right here that when I get this first palette next to that second palette, it wants to snap in place. And this is one of the beautiful things with CET. The way that our symbols are programmed, the rules and specifications for these different items are programmed directly into the symbols. And so you're going to have a lot of things that know that they are allowed to be connected together. And so this is going to save you a lot of time and effort in the long run. So things will snap right into place. If for some reason you ever want to override that snapping behavior, so let's say that I wanted to have this palette be really, really close, but not actually connected, I can hold down the shift key and that will override my snapping behavior. So let's say that I wanted it to be really close, but not quite touching, something like that. I can override that snapping behavior by holding down the shift key. Okay. That's just a good general knowledge. And you'll find that there's different things that you'll want to do in different instances where you might want that. Now, we do have a toggle tool available for this. So it's this one right here. This is disable snapping. I recommend that you don't ever use that toggle tool. Instead, use your shift key to override whatever immediate action you're doing. If you disable your snapping here and you try to have things snap together, nothing will snap together again for you until you turn that back on. And that can be really frustrating. So the beauty of CET is that things do snap together. It's like a giant Lego set. Okay. We want that. That's the most wonderful part about CET is how things snap together. So you don't want to really disable this. But sometimes we have situations where we want to put things real close without them actually snapping. And that's when you're going to use your shift key, okay, to override those snapping behaviors. Now, also, when we bring things into CET, we can work with them by using the stretch nodes. Now, when I select something, I've got these 4 different squares. I've got things on all of these different sides. And then I've also got this little circle in the center. Now, these are stretch nodes on the outside. So when I hover over them, you'll see that it says stretch. Okay. And if I left click on that stretch node and drag, I can change the size of whatever I'm putting into CET by dragging those stretch nodes. And what I'm able to change the size to is all dependent on what has been programmed into this symbol. And so when you're working with actual products, this is really, really powerful because you're not going to be able to stretch it to the size of something that doesn't actually exist or isn't manufacturable. Okay, so those rules are already programmed into that symbol. So this is a really, really beautiful part about CET. Now that circle in the center is your rotation node. So when you left click and drag that, that's going to allow you to rotate. Again, if you hold down that shift key, you can override your angle step and you can get it to be any kind of rotation that you want. Okay. You also have stretch nodes available in your 3D view. So you can do this in the 3D view as well. They don't look like squares in your 3D view. You'll see that they look like cylinders instead. Okay. Now, why this is important is because occasionally you will have symbols that have a stretch node on the top as well. So in this view, you can't really see. You're just going to have that rotation. But in the 3D view, if we zoom in here, you can see you've got a cylinder on the top, and that is actually your stretch node that will allow you to change the height of that item. Okay, so you can't change the height by using a stretch node in the 2D view. You're going to have to do that in the 3D view. You can do this with racking. So if you decide that you want more or less levels in a particular section of your racking, you can actually make that selection and then drag and stretch this. We're going to show you that when we get into the Speedrack extension overview. Yep, so this will show up on a box, but it will not show up on a pallet. So certain items have the ability to stretch in that Z direction, but other ones do not. And so it's possible that you just have an item here that does not show that. And you do also have to be in the 3D view to see that. Did that help clear it up, John? All right. So let's go ahead and continue on to our exercise. Yeah, you got it. No problem. So for our exercise for placing symbols, here we go. Here's a quick reference as well if you need a quick reference for that. What I would like you to do is I would like you to place a few symbols of your choice into your drawing. So the examples here are a couple boxes and a little trolley. And then I would like you to practice adjusting some of those properties by using the quick properties box and also by using the stretch nodes. Okay, so I just want you to practice a little bit with these. And I'm going to give you a couple minutes to do that. And we are also about halfway through our class today. So we are going to take a quick break and then come back. So let's go ahead and we'll do 13 minutes. So we'll come back at 40 minutes after the hour. So maybe work on this for a few minutes, play around with the different options, see what you're able to accomplish here with a few of these different industrial equipment symbols, kind of start to get a feel for it, okay? And then go ahead and take a quick break, and we will circle back at 40 minutes after the hour. Okay, Craig, so let's pop into CET here. You can actually right click on the ground area, and that will give you a menu, and you can click on floor properties. And the first option is to show the floor. So you just want to make sure that you've got that one turned on. My guess is that that is what is off for you. Let me know if that doesn't work. And there's just no floor showing at all. Was your was your next option selected there? For auto expand? Was that one turned on? Interesting. Okay, so this might be a great time to run a clean start. Um, Unfortunately, we do sometimes run into these hiccups. And if you've got show floor on and the auto expand on, you absolutely should have a floor. The only other thing that potentially could have happened is that you have a different material selected where it's like a white material, but you would still be able to tell that there was a floor there. Um, but yeah, you should absolutely be able to see it. So you may need to run a quick clean start. We have something similar to that. So what you can do is you can actually do a zoom to fit, and that will zoom you into everything that is in your view. So right here on the toolbar, I've got a zoom to fit. I've got it on both my 2D and my 3D. And if you want to do a selection, you can actually zoom to a selection as well. So if there's something particular that you wanted to zoom to, you can do it that way. But that zoom to fit is going to be your similar to the zoom extents. Yeah. Yeah, it's funny because if you have that auto expand floor, it shouldn't matter where you put something, even if it's like massively far away, it will just make your floor really massive. So yeah, that's an unexpected behavior for sure. Okay, John. Real quick, I'm gonna have you check your control panel. So your file menu, and then down towards the bottom, you're gonna go to your control panel. And then in your region tab, your distance unit is where you can select what type of measurement you would like. And I'm going to still be here. So if you guys have any other questions in the break time, feel free to ask them. No problem at all. Okay, so uh, do you have multiple monitors? Yes. Okay, so check for that dialog pop-up. It likes to hide behind Outlook. Sometimes it likes to hide behind like Teams if you have Teams going, but it really likes to hide behind Outlook. So go ahead and check on your other monitors to see if your control panel dialog popped up anywhere else. You can also, let's see, this is something that I don't use real often. Where is that tool? There's a gather all dialogues. Let's see, I think it's a control G. Hmm, there is a button for it. Yep, it was hiding. Okay, so that happens really, really frequently. So the other thing that you want to check here is going to be in your, we're going to go to your views tab. Okay, do this one first. Go to views, and then this one right here. Keep dialogues on same screen. That will force all of these dialog windows to open on the same screen as CET because it is very common that they will hide behind other things. And sometimes, I mean, Control Panel will still let you work if it's open, but sometimes you'll get pop-ups that are requiring a prompt from you and it will look like CET has frozen, but really you just have a pop-up that you don't realize has even come up. So this keep dialogues on same screen is really important. And then in the region tab, distance unit is where you're going to go to change your measurements. Okay, so the floor will automatically get bigger as you start to add things in. So if you added a bunch of racking or if you added walls in, or you add a CAD plan in, the floor is going to automatically expand to fit whatever you have in your drawing. So typically you don't need to spend any time on making the floor larger. If that's something that you want to do manually instead, which I wouldn't recommend because it will automatically do it for you, but you can control it by right-clicking on the floor area in your 3D view and go into the floor properties, and you can actually manually extend the floor size. So if you want to turn these on to a very specific size, we can turn off the auto expand and then just set the value for the size of your floor. But that auto expand saves you a ton of time. So you will only be able to access manufacturer extensions if you are running the full version of CET material handling. If you are running CET material handling essentials, you don't have access to the different manufacturer extensions. Essentials is more designed for like consultancy agencies and more kind of agnostic solutions. But for folks that are using specific extensions, such as Speedrack, you're going to be using the full version. That is interesting. Can I ask what product you brought in or what you brought into your drawing? Hmm. All right. Let's see. I think you might have another option that is set here. Let's see what we can do. So it just says, you got it? Okay. All right. There is an option to make everything rotatable that can kind of be a little silly. You just picked the winner. Thank you, Corey. That's great. All right, that is a great question. How to delete something. So we're going to talk about how to actually kind of manipulate the things that we've brought in our next topic. So I'm going to save most of that for then. But you can press the delete key and that will delete it. Or you can also click this little red X. This is your remover tool, and you can hover and then just click on it to remove something. I won't hold you in too much suspense here. So to get into the perspective, are you in orthographic view right now? You can click on this perspective button and that will open up your different navigation options and you can swap between perspective and orthographic here. So now that we have some things in our drawing, it makes it a little bit easier to see. If I have this front view, I can see the exact distance between all of these things, and this is actually measurable with our ruler here, so we can actually really use this. If we're in that perspective view, it looks more realistic, right? But we're not able to really measure these distances. Things get a little bit skewed. But this dialog right here, this little camera views option is available by clicking on that perspective button and then toggling between these. It's stuck in front view. Okay, so go ahead and toggle from orthographic to perspective, and then use your right mouse button and see if you can change your view by orbiting. Yeah, it's going to kind of stay on. Yep, yeah, it's going to stay in whatever view it was in before until you kind of orbit and put it where you want it to be. No problem. Okay, so let's go ahead and talk about how to manipulate symbols once we have gotten them in our drawing. All right, so how can we work with these symbols once we've got them there? A few things that we're going to start with, some very basic details. We're going to talk about cursor color, and then we're going to talk about selection and like how to select things and the different types of selection. So when we are in CET, if we are in blank space, our cursor is going to be white. So you can see my little arrow here is white. That means that I am in blank space, and if I were to click right there, it would uh, it would end up being nothing. It means that it's just blank, empty space there. Okay. If I have a selection made and I click into empty space, it's going to allow me to unselect that. So it will remove my selection and it will free up my cursor. Okay. So I have nothing active right now. Okay. Really important that you recognize that for empty space because sometimes there will be situations, especially if you have like a PDF import, where things look like it's empty space, but it's not. So pay attention to your cursor color. White cursor means that it's empty space. And if you click, it's going to remove your selection. And that's how you can kind of free things up. Now, the next type of color that you might see is green. And that means that you have something on your cursor that has not been placed yet, or maybe you've already placed something, but it's waiting for some kind of input from you. So that means that you've got some kind of symbol or some kind of tool or something happening on your cursor, and it's waiting for you to use it. Okay, so green means that there's something active on your cursor right now. The next color is blue, and that indicates something that can be selected to be moved or adjusted or some other kind of worked with in some other way. So you can see as I hover over these palettes or this box, my cursor is turning blue. Okay. This also is true for other things that we have in our drawing. So let's say that I've got a dimension in my drawing. If I hover over that dimension, you can see that my cursor is turning blue. So it's not just actual objects. It's anything that's in your drawing that can be kind of manipulated in any way. Um, that is when your cursor will turn blue. So if you select any of those things, when you get a blue cursor, whatever is under your cursor, that blue cursor, is what you're going to get the quick properties for. Okay. So depending on what you're clicking on, when you get that blue cursor, that is those quick properties that will be related to whatever you have selected. Now, the last color that your cursor may turn is yellow. And that will be if you are hovered over a stretch node or a rotation node or a connector, if you happen to pick something that doesn't actually stretch. So those will all give you these yellow cursors. This is also really nice because sometimes we get in a little bit of a hurry and we're trying to stretch things and things maybe aren't happening correctly for us. This is a good way to make sure that you are actually on the stretch node. If I'm right here next to this stretch node, maybe like half of my cursor is on the stretch node, you can see my cursor is still blue. That will not stretch. That will actually just move my box around. Okay. So that can be really frustrating. Just a good way to double check yourself is I want to stretch this. Okay, my cursor's yellow. That means I'm clicked in the right spot. I am a chronic misclicker, and so this is a good tool for me. I just kind of eyeball it until I get that yellow, and then I know that I'm clicking in the right space. Okay. All right, so those are cursor colors. Next, let's talk about single and group select. So this is major for us, okay? This is one of the most important things that you're going to learn in CET is learning to toggle between single select and group select. The reason why this is so important is because of the way that CET works and how things snap together. So when you have a single object in CET, if you are in single select mode, you are going to get a purple outline, okay? If I select something that has been snapped together, even if I have snapped these together, I'm still going to get a purple outline. It's going to select one object, whatever I'm clicking on, and it's going to give me that purple outline. Okay, so that is my single select mode. If I want to toggle into group select mode, that will automatically select everything that has been snapped together. So let's say that I wanted to toggle into my group select mode. I have a toggle button for that up at the top, but there's also a keyboard shortcut for it. And this is one of the keyboard shortcuts that I really want you guys to remember. Okay, the keyboard shortcut for this is S. Okay, so right now I'm in single select mode. If I press S on my keyboard, it's going to automatically change me to my group select mode. So you'll see here that now instead of having a purple highlight, I have a gold highlight. Okay, so gold is for group. So this is my group select. So if I just click on one of these things here that's been snapped together, it's going to select the entire group of those things that has been snapped together. Okay, so if we think about this kind of big picture, when you're building out racking systems, all of your bays are going to be snapped together. Okay, they work in a system. So these are all going to be snapped together. It's going to work all together. So if you want to grab the entire system, you can be in group select mode, select one thing, and it will select your entire group of snapped together components. However, if you want to grab something individually, so let's say that I wanted to work with this particular palette here, and maybe I wanted to stretch part of it or do something. Maybe I just want to move an individual part of it. I can't do that unless I'm in single select mode. Okay. So maybe I want to delete this top one. If I'm in group select mode, it's going to automatically select this entire group. And then if I go to press delete, it's going to delete that entire thing. Okay. I'm going to Control Z to undo that. If I want to go into my single select mode to delete one, I'm just going to press S on my keyboard, or I can hit that toggle button. And now I can select the individual that I want to manipulate. So whether I want to delete it, stretch it, move it, do whatever I need to do to it, it's going to change based on my selection mode. Okay, so let's say that maybe I have a bunch of stuff that's all snapped together. Maybe I've got a whole bunch of these. So I'm still in my group select mode and I've snapped these together. Now you can see if I select one, it's going to grab all of them. So it doesn't matter if I continue to add to it or take things away. Whatever I change this group to, where everything's been all clicked together, that is what's going to be selected when I grab it in my group select mode. Yep. So S on your keyboard, S like select. That's going to allow you to toggle between your single and your group select. And you also have this toggle button here. We'll do the same thing for you. Now, I mentioned that new control panel option where you can hover and you will see what's going to be selected. So it makes a lot of sense for that single select, because whatever I'm hovering over, I'm getting that outline. Where this gets really, really cool is when you are in group select mode, because I can hover and I can see that all of this has been snapped together. So I can see what will be selected if I click on any of this. I can see the whole entire thing here. So that's a pretty cool improvement that we just released. Okay, now we've got the idea of single and group select, right? Now let's talk about how we can select multiple things in our drawing. Okay, we're going to do the rectangle select tool, which is on the toolbar. It's available in both the 2D view and the 3D view. I recommend that you get really familiar with it in the 2D view before you start messing in the 3D view. Just because when you use it in the 3D view, there might be things kind of off in the horizon. It's going to pick up everything that is in that box, regardless of if it's like the thing in the foreground or way off in the background. So it can get a little bit squirrely. So I really recommend that you get very familiar with it in the 2D view first before you really play with it in the 3D view. Okay, so rectangle select. It's right here. It looks like a little square, but it's a little rectangle with a cursor next to it. Okay. So I'm going to left click on that tool to activate the tool. Now you can see I've got a box on my cursor and my box right now is gold. That lets me know that I'm currently in my group select mode. I can, if I choose, I can toggle to my single select and then start my rectangle tool. And now I'm in single select and now I've got a purple outline. Okay. So depending on how you want to select things, you're going to choose whether or not you want a single or a group select. And this is all very situational. So kind of keep an open mind here. I'm going to show you how these tools work. And then depending on how you need to use them in the future, you're going to use them a number of different ways. So let's go ahead and start here. If I want to grab this palette, I can go ahead and left click to start this tool, and then I'm just going to move away from that original left click. I don't have to hold the button down. It's just a left click once, and it's going to start this rectangle for me. Now, because it is a dotted line, okay, that lets me know that this is a partially enclosed rectangle, which means that anything that is even partially within this rectangle will be selected. So you can see as I just barely touch this palette, it's just barely in there, partially in there, it will be selected. So it's becoming highlighted. That lets me know that that will be selected. So if I just kind of just barely touch all these palettes, all that stuff will be selected when I left click. Okay. Now, if I go the opposite direction, okay, I'm going to start in that same place. And now instead of moving from left to right to get a partial box, I'm going to move from right to left. Okay, going from right to left will give me a solid box. This is a fully enclosed box. This means that something within that selection needs to be fully within that box for that to be selected. Now, these ones are kind of silly because it's going to consider the box that we generated as one of those things that needs to be fully enclosed, and that will completely select that palette for me. But this other empty palette, you'll see that it doesn't get selected until it is completely enclosed within that rectangle. Okay, so same thing here. If I wanted to maybe select these different things, I would have to be completely surrounding it to actually make that selection. Okay. Now, let's take a look at what happens when we do this with group select. So I'm just going to press S to toggle. I'm going to start my rectangle select tool. I've got the gold that lets me know that I am in my group select mode. So we've got all these palettes over here. So let's take a look at what happens. I'm going to go ahead and do a partial. Okay. And now I'm going to partially select this. And now any bit of this that is included is going to automatically select that entire group of things. So CET is going to treat that group that has been all connected as one thing. Okay, so even though it's just a partial box, I'm just going to barely touch this one palette. It's going to select that entire group of palettes for me. Okay. And if I go the other way, so let's go ahead and do a fully enclosed. It's going to wait until one thing within that selection is fully enclosed before that entire selection is selected. So I don't have to select the entire group, but one object within that entire group needs to be fully surrounded for that to work in my group select mode. Okay. So this is nice because sometimes if we have a bunch of stuff all together, maybe we know that, anything within this whole area, anything here, I want to select it. But you can also use it to kind of manage other selections. Sometimes we'll have a situation where, um, you know, we don't want to select everything. So let's say that we have a group select here and we want to grab all of these palettes, but we don't want this one. And we know we can get around this first thing without having to select the other thing. Again, highly situational, depending on what you've got within your drawing. But what I want for you guys to recognize is that you do have these tools available. And as you become more comfortable using CET, you're going to use these in different combinations of ways. So just more tools in your toolbox at this point, but just know that you do have the ability to select things individually or in a group. So that's going to be single or group select mode. Okay. That's S on your keyboard. Really important. That one's a really important one to remember. And you can do fully enclosed or partially enclosed, depending on the direction that you are moving your mouse. Now, you do have the option within your quick properties to make this be backwards. Okay. So if you want to toggle that, you can. But any kind of support or help article or anything that's going to refer back to the default for this. So this direction of left to right will be partial and right to left will be fully enclosed. But let's say that you really just wanted to change it while you were making your selection. You can toggle that option by pressing space bar. Okay. So you can toggle between partial and fully enclosed if you need to. Yeah, so that could be that option was just was maybe you got it swapped there. It is swappable. Okay. All right. Next thing, let's learn how to copy. Copy is another one that I'm going to ask you to remember a keyboard shortcut for. The most important thing for copy is the letter A. Okay, and what that's going to do is that's going to create a copy on your cursor of whatever you have selected. So if I just make a single selection, I press A, it's going to put a copy of that on my cursor, and then I can continue to place copies of that wherever I want. Okay. Now, if while I am making a copy, while I have a copy on my cursor, if I select a directional arrow, let's say that I choose right, it will lock in a direction from the original thing, whatever the original selection was, and it will allow me to place that exactly in line with that original copy. Now, what's important about this is that this gives me an extra option in my quick properties. If I just look at my quick properties while I'm making a copy, you'll see that I don't have those options. But as I press a directional arrow, I then will get those options. So if I need to make a copy that's precisely a specific distance from the original, that is how I'm going to do this. So I'm going to type my directional arrow. So I type to the right. So I just press my right directional arrow. Now I can give it a distance. I'm going to say that I want this to be exactly 10 feet. Okay. Now the difference between to next and edge to edge is going to be whether it's measuring from the center point to the center point. That's the to next. And edge to edge is going to be your clearance. So let's say that I need this to be a 10-foot clearance between these two items. Okay, so I can set that. I've got my distance set to 10. I've got edge to edge. I've got my copy here. So I'm going to left click to place that copy. And then as I move my cursor further away, it's going to continue to remember that preference as I make these copies. So I can make as many copies as I want, and they're all going to have that exact same distance set between. Oh, how do you get off the rectangle selects? Okay, so it is going to stay there until you either press escape or until you swipe left past your extension tab area. That's going to be true for almost every tool or function that you run into in CET, or even items. You're going to have to press escape or swipe left to free your cursor back up. Okay, so copy, pressing A to make that copy. Okay. All right. Now you can also copy with a base point. So let's say that you want to copy something from a specific point, but you want to have a specific snapping point on that thing. So right now, if I make a copy of this palette, the center of that palette is my snapping point, and it will snap to other palettes for me. But let's say that I wanted to snap this palette. Let's say that I wanted these corners to be flush here, or maybe I had a wall in my drawing and I wanted it to be exactly in the corner. I'm going to use this box as my example. Okay. Right now, it's going to be kind of difficult for me to get this right into position there, right next to my box. So what I might want to do is I might want to make a copy with a base point. So what copy with a base point will allow me to do is it will allow me to give it a snap point. Okay. So to do a copy with a base point, it's Control Shift C, and that is in your participant guide. So it's going to be easy to remember. And you also have it here in your edit dropdown. It's this copy with a base point. Okay. So you can either click that button or you can do Control Shift C. Now I'm going to select the thing that I want to copy. Okay. So I'm going to hover over this palette. You'll see that it snaps onto the palette for me. It even turns blue in my 3D view. Okay. And now I'm going to give it a base point. So now I've got my crosshairs and I'm going to say, I want this top left corner to be my base point. So here we go. Now I'm just going to snap it right onto that corner of my box and then left click. Now I can continue to do this. So maybe I want to have these at a diagonal. Okay. So I can use that base point to continue to make those copies. And that's another way that we can really precisely space plan. That one's a little bit more advanced, that copy with a base point, but it is a really, really fabulous tool for you to know about. Again, more tools in your toolbox. Okay. So in our participant guide, like I said, we've got that here for if you need a quick refresher on that. That's one that I find that people come back to frequently. They'll remember it when they need it. You'll come into a situation where you're like, I just want to copy this thing and it won't snap in place for me. How can I do this? Remember, you have copy with the base point so you can control where you want things to actually snap. Okay. All right. So here is an example of to next, which is center to center, and then edge to edge is your clearance. And here is an example of copy with a base point. So for this example, we wanted this table to be really next to this wall, this copy of the table. So we can actually select the table, select the point that we want to snap to, and then select the point where we want that copy to be made. Okay, next, let's talk about some other ways that we can work with our symbols. Let's see. Exactly. So it's only going to snap to the center of the object, right? So that is the default snap point. And so that is why you would want to use that copy with a base point instead of just your A button to make a copy. Using your A button is just going to give you that center point snap. But if you do a copy with a base point, you can tell it which point on that item you want it to snap to. All right. Okay, so next, let's talk about how to. Okay, so when you first use the tool, um, the first thing you're going to do is you're going to pick the thing that you want to copy. So that will snap directly to the center. So go ahead and left click on the thing that you want to copy, and then you'll get a blue crosshairs. And then when you get that blue crosshairs, that second selection is when you select the point to actually use as your base point. So if I do a Control Shift C and I select this palette, then once I've gotten that palette selected, then I can pick the point that I want to be my actual base point. All right, so next we're going to look at position. Yeah, that was a really great question. Okay, so let's say that we wanted to move things. Let's say that I've got a wall in my drawing and I want to be able to move something to be directly up next to my wall or any other kind of position need. Maybe you've got an area that is designated for like some egress and you want to be able to position your products right next to where that egress line walks, maximize your square footage available, right? So what you can do is you can use the position tool, which is on your 2D toolbar, and it looks like a square and then a series of yellow dots, okay, that make a little corner here. This is your position tool. You can also access the position tool by pressing R on your keyboard, and that will start the tool as well. I think about it as reposition. Otherwise, I will never remember that R is position, but that is the position tool. And what we're going to do is we're going to make a selection and we can pick any point. So similar to that copy with a base point, we can pick any point that we want to position. So let's say that I want this top right corner to be positioned exactly on this wall. Now I can left click and it will move that exactly into position for me. Now, this is also dependent on single or group select. So I was in single select here. Now I've toggled into group select. So let's go ahead and use our position tool again. Let's go ahead and position this group of palettes on the wall. Okay. So again, when you're in group select, it's going to treat all of those items as one item. So if you're using that position tool, you can use it to grab a whole group of items and position them wherever you need them. Position is really fantastic for when you have things that do not snap naturally. Now, the other thing that is really cool with position is not only can you just kind of click things into place where you want them. So let's say that I have this wall, and I wanted to position it here. But let's say that maybe I've got some electrical outlets, so I need to leave a little bit of space. Maybe I need 3 inches off the wall. Okay. Instead of having to do a bunch of workarounds, what I can do is I can actually use the position tool to do this. This is a 2-in-1 tool. So I can use my position tool. I'm going to tell it where I want to position from. So I'm going to say this top left corner of this palette. Now I'm going to say that it's going to be flush with the edge, but I need it to be 3 inches away from the wall. So instead of left clicking here to make it flush with the edge, I'm actually going to right click. And adding a right click gives it an extra reference point. Okay. So by giving it this extra reference point, now I can either press a directional arrow or I can hover in the direction that I want to go. I can even specify an angle here if I have a very specific angle that I need it to be away from that reference point. So for this, I'm just going to leave it in the downward direction and I'm going to give a distance of 3 inches. So I'm just going to type in 3 inches and then left click. And now that palette is flush with the edge of the wall and it's exactly 3 inches from the wall. Okay, so talking through it makes it take a lot longer than it really needs to, but you can do this with anything. So let's say that I wanted maybe the group of this palette to be on the wall, same thing. I'm going to right click and then I'm just going to type in 3 inches, press enter. And now those palettes are lined up on the wall, 3 inches away from the wall. So really, really nice way to speed up your space planning is by using that position tool. Now, this can be used in the Z-axis as well, but it does take a little bit more, I think, comfort in CET. So if I wanted to use the position tool here, I could select a point and then I can choose my Z-axis and change from here. So let's say that I wanted this to be, exactly 1 foot higher than it was originally. I can go ahead and use that position tool to adjust that. Occasionally, you will run into things in CET that do not have an elevation property. Most things will have an elevation property that you can just adjust, and that will make your life a lot easier. But if you need to, you can use that position tool to adjust specific properties as well. Okay. All right. So again, use this as your reference. Okay. So here's the position tool. Here is an action. So here we go. We're positioning this table into the corner. And remember that you can actually specify that different distance by giving it that extra base point by right clicking. Okay. We are covering a ton of information in our class over the next couple of days. I do not expect you to remember all of this. Again, this is all tools in your toolbox, but please refer back to your participant guide to remember these different tools that are available to you. Okay. Like I said, it's a really robust program and it is easy to get kind of overwhelmed with all of these different tools and functions. So just remember, you do have this guide to refer back to. Okay, so next let's go ahead and do another exercise. I'm going to have you practice selecting items and toggling between group and single select mode. So if you've got some palettes in your drawing, you can go ahead and snap some palettes together if you haven't already. That's a great way to experiment between single and group select. I would like you to practice making some copies using the edge to edge and to next feature. So remember, when you make a copy, you're going to press A, and then you're going to lock in a direction by pressing a directional arrow up, down, left, or right. And then that will open up those options for edge to edge and to next. I just want you to be really comfortable using those different options. And then I would like you to practice using the position tool. So again, that's the keyboard shortcut R or the position tool on your toolbar there. And if you're looking for a challenge, go ahead and try to make yourself a copy by using the copy with a base point feature. Okay. All right. I will give you a couple minutes to work on that. And then we are going to move on to some other ways that we can manipulate our symbols. All right. If you want to move the quick properties box, you can hover near the top of it until you get a four-sided arrow. And then you can left click and drag it. Sometimes it wants to kind of snap to weird spots. So just hold down your shift key and that will allow you to put it kind of anywhere. And if you want it to go back into the corner, you can just click the little green dock button, or you can hide it by clicking on the little eyeball and then unhide it by clicking the eyeball again. All right, so we are going to go ahead and continue on. So let's talk about other ways that we can manipulate our symbols once we get them into our drawings. So we talked a little bit about zoom already. So that zoom to fit is going to zoom so you can see everything that is showing on your screen. This is extremely helpful for if you find yourself kind of lost in space. This does happen fairly frequently. People will accidentally zoom out too much or something like that, and they won't be able to find any other product. Use that zoom to fit. That will bring you back into some kind of normalcy where you can kind of adjust and get back to where all of your product is. Then you also have your zoom to selection. So whatever your selection is, you can zoom in that selected group. And then one other thing that is pretty cool here is this satellite view. If you click on this satellite view in 2D, it will actually show you
Hello.
everything
Hey,
that is in your drawing. And then with that satellite view, you can zoom by using your scroll wheel in or out. And then whatever is in that view, so let's say that I want to get a good look at these two palettes, okay? I'm going to left click there and it's going to automatically shoot me to that spot. So that's really nice if you've got like a very large warehouse and you want to automatically zoom into some specific spot on it without having to kind of like pan and move around. You can use that satellite view to jump right into whichever view you need to get to. Okay. Other selection tools. We do have a lasso select, which is pretty cool. We have the ability to select things using this tool. So we're going to left click on this lasso select tool. Okay, it's right here. It looks like a little cursor and then a little lasso next to it. This again will depend on your selection mode, so group or single select. Okay, right now I'm in group select mode. And you can choose whether you want it to be partially or fully enclosed. And then we can just start to make a lasso. So I'm going to left click once to start it, and I can just select whatever I want, and then left click again, and anything within that lasso will be selected. So that can be really cool because you can grab a large section of items that way without too much work. Again, it is going to consider group and single select mode. So for example, if I just barely touch a little bit of those because I'm in group select mode, it's going to grab all of those again because I'm also in partial. Okay. So really depending on how you need to select things, you can do it that way. Now, let's say that I've got a bunch of stuff selected, but maybe I don't want to have a particular thing in there selected. I can deselect items by holding down my control key and left clicking. So let's say that I didn't want that palette to be included in the selection. I can also add items to my selection by doing the same thing. I'm going to hold down my control key and left click on whatever I want to add to that selection. Okay. So very similar to other programs like, you know, any kind of like office program. Um, very similar functionality there. Let's say that I wanted all of this selected except for this one middle palette. Because I'm in group select mode, I'm not going to be able to do that. I'm going to want to toggle into my single select mode. I'm going to go ahead and grab my rectangle select tool, go ahead and grab all of this. Let's say that I didn't want this one over here, so I'm going to hold down control. Let's say that I wanted all of this minus this one middle palette. Just going to hold down my control and select. Okay. So now I've got all of that selected minus that one central palette. So again, if you have things that are connected together, you're not going to be able to remove individual components from a group from your selection unless you are in single select mode. Now, single select mode does allow you to select more than one thing, but it's selecting those things independently of one another. So you can control what's actually being selected here. Okay. All right. Another tool that you have available is your helpline. So that's going to be this tool right here. And this is something that's going to show up for you in the drawing view, but it doesn't show up in any kind of print or anything like that. And this is nice to kind of designate areas or to make quick measurements. Let's say that I needed to have some kind of clearance away from this wall. Maybe I need a 2-foot clearance. I can go ahead and add that in, and then I've got this nice line ready to go. So if I know that maybe this group of pallets needs to be, 2 feet away from that wall, I've got a nice point that I can immediately jump to from there. So to place that, you're just going to left click somewhere to anchor it. And then you can set your distance within the length value. So if you know the length, you can go ahead and type it in. Maybe I want a 5-foot length. Or you can just move your cursor to wherever you want it to be. Maybe there's a specific snap point that you want it to get to. Maybe you want to snap to some other area. You can left click to place that. Now, your help lines can also be dragged around, so you can use the stretch nodes to drag those around and adjust their length as well. So you can control those quite a bit, and they are nice to kind of have in your drawing to help you space plan. It's just another nice tool that's available. Then we have our ruler tool. That helps us measure. It does not give any kind of lasting dimension. It just gives us a quick measurement from one point to another. So it's a good way to just double check to see kind of how things are working and if you've got enough space and to just kind of be for your reference. Now, again, this is really good in the orthographic view. If you need to measure things with that ruler, maybe you need to check some clearances, make sure that there's some particular amount of space. You can use that ruler tool here using that orthographic tool as well. For the most part, this is going to be something that you're going to want to use in your 2D view, but you can use it in the 3D using the orthographic camera views. It does not put a dimension into your drawing. We will talk about adding dimensions here in just a second. That's going to be in our Tools component tab. Okay, and then the last thing to talk about is how to get rid of stuff. Okay, so you can make a selection. You can also make a rectangle select by using the control or the keyboard shortcut control and drag your left mouse button. So instead of actually clicking on the button, I can hold down my control key and then drag, and that will do the same thing for me. And the way that I drag is going to determine whether it's partially or fully enclosed. And again, it does take into consideration single or group select mode. So I can just drag to make that selection, holding down control and drag so I can quickly select things. Okay. Once I've gotten a selection, I can press delete on my keyboard and that will remove them. I'm going to press Control Z to undo. I do also have an undo and a redo button up here at the top if I don't want to use those keyboard shortcuts. Now, let's say that I wanted to remove a bunch of stuff. I can also use this remover tool, and whatever I hover on, if I left click, that will be removed. But I can also use this like a rectangle select tool. So let's say that I left click and drag. You can see I've got partially enclosed and fully enclosed, and anything that is within that selection will be deleted. So that can be kind of cool. You can choose how you want to use this. This is a good example of, maybe I want to for sure get rid of these palettes, but I don't want to get rid of this one. Using a fully enclosed is really good for that because trying to get exactly this one, but not that one can be kind of tricky. So, different ways to use these tools. This does also work in the 3D view, and it does also work as a rectangle select. But again, I really recommend that you not use it as the rectangle select in this view because, for example, if I make a selection like this, and maybe I'm just meaning to get rid of those palettes in front, you can see that it's actually getting rid of that palette that's on that lift in the back. Okay. So just be very, very mindful of what's actually being selected if you're using it in the 3D view. Okay. Next exercise. I'm going to have you guys do this one fairly quickly because we do still have a bit to cover today. The next exercise is to practice using the rectangle select tool by using the keyboard shortcut. That is to control and left click and drag. Okay. And I would like you to practice using the remover tool. So you can do that by clicking the actual remover tool. There is one available on both the 2D and the 3D toolbars. And you can use it individually, or you can do it by doing the same kind of action as a rectangle select, which is that holding down the control, the left clicking and dragging. So I'll give you a minute to work on that. And then we are going to talk about our tools tab. Okay, so let's go ahead and talk about our Tools tab. So we're going to open up our Tools extension, and that looks like a wrench and a ruler. And there are a lot of different things available for you here. Now, real quick, when you open up an extension, it is going to be sectioned out into different sections. Okay, so the name of the section will be in bold. And you can control what you're actually looking at here pretty easily by opening or closing these. So they've got a down arrow by default, but if you want to close a certain section, you can actually minimize these sections. So if there are certain tools that you never use, you can go ahead and minimize those. And then when you open this extension up, you're going to be looking at the things that you use really frequently. Okay. So for this, I'm going to go ahead and we're going to start with our dimensions. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and condense styles, and we're going to talk about dimensions. So you do have dimensions available on your toolbar. You've got a 3-click dimension. And then you also have dimensions available here in tools. Now, when you see this little black triangle on a tool, that means that this is a nested tool group. You can either left click on that little tiny triangle or you can right click anywhere on the button, and that will open up the nested tool group. Sometimes these have many options and sometimes there's only a couple. But what this is doing is this is saying, what do you want this button to do? So if I set it to a 3-click dimension, that means when I click this button, it's going to give me a 3-click dimension. If I set it to be a 2-click dimension, now when I use this tool, it's going to give me a 2-click dimension. Okay. So same thing here. I've got a chain dimension, and then I've also got a quick chain dimension. So whichever tool I want that to actually give me, I can set that using that nested tool group. So you have a 3-click dimension on your toolbar. So I always keep my 2-click dimension here because I've got one available for each now. The only difference between these two dimensions is that one is going to allow you to set the leg length. So I'll go ahead and show you these here. So here is a 2-click dimension. I have the option to choose whether this is associative or not. So I'll go ahead and leave that on, and I'll show you what that does. So I'm going to left click to anchor to the first point that I want to measure to, and then I'm going to left click to the second point. And when I left click that second time, it's going to automatically put that dimension in my drawing for me. Now let's go ahead and look at that 3-click dimension. I can either use it from this nested tool group, or I can grab it from my toolbar up top here. And I'm going to measure from the same distance. So I'm going to go ahead and left click that start point. Then I'm going to left click my end point. And now it's going to ask me for a third input. So this is where I want my leg length to be. Like, how long do I want my leg length to be? So we'll go ahead and put it right there. So the only difference is defining that leg length. Now, this 2-click dimension that I added first does have stretch nodes on it. The first bottom ones are going to be what I'm actually measuring to. Then these next stretch nodes are going to be the leg length. So really, if you want to use the 2-click dimension, you can still change that leg length after the fact. So you do still have that option available. Then the third stretch node is going to be the text. So you do want it to be above or below the line, and then where on the line do you want it to be? Now the 3-click dimension is going to have the exact same options. It's going to have the length of the legs. It's going to have the length of the actual measurement, and then also where the text is located. Now I'm going to turn off my associative dimension for this other one. I'm going to put this back in just like we had it before, and I'll show you the difference between those two. Now this one was associative and this one was not. I'm going to grab this palette that we're measuring to, and I'm just going to move it. Now you can see the one that was associative is automatically updating no matter where I move this palette to. It's automatically updating that dimension for me, while the other one stays put. Okay, so that's the difference between associative and not associative. Now I want you to notice that when I click on these different dimensions and I look at their properties, there's a ton of properties that you can change, first of all, but really important, you cannot change whether it's associative or not from here. Okay, so that's why it's important to check those quick properties as you are placing things, as well as after you have placed them, because sometimes you're going to get options that are available before that are not available after. All right, so we've got quite a few other tools that are available. We've got angle measurements for dimensions. And we've got radius dimensions. These are all going to work pretty similarly. You're just going to pick a point to measure to or from, and then give it the other information. So depending on what you're actually measuring, or maybe you want to specify an actual angle, you can type in the angle here in the box. Radius, this is going to snap to any kind of circular item in your drawing. So we can use these dimensions here. Now, next we are going to go down to this image and text area. So for the text, the first box that we've got is a text box. So to make a text box in your drawing, you're just going to left click on that and then left click to anchor it. And then you can move away from that original point to select a spot, like how big you want this text box to be. Left click again, and that's going to open up your text dialog. Okay, you can type in whatever you want here. So we're going to say CT Rocks, and we'll click OK, and that will now show up in our text box. Now, a text box will allow you to fill in the background, and it will also allow you to do some different kind of alignment things. You can adjust the size, and then everywhere that you have any kind of text or dimensioning, you're also going to see these styles. I recommend that you check out styles on the Help Center. This is one of those topics that you can get really deep into. You don't need to really be familiar with it at this point, but just know that it is a thing that exists, and this is going to adjust what these things look like. If you want to change them individually instead of using styles and changing them universally, you can click this edit button and make changes from here. So maybe you want to change, oh, that's kind of awful. You can change your text here. You can change your height. You can change your different colors. So maybe you have like some install callouts that you want. You can do something like this. Now you can also, like I said, you can fill that background. So if you wanted to fill the background to some other color, maybe you want it to be really visible to who's ever seeing it, you want to really call it out, you can do that as well. So pay attention to those quick properties. You've got lots of different things that you can do with these different properties. So maybe we want to give it a line around the outside. Lots of cool stuff you can do here. Next, we have the label tool. So this is just going to be for some short text. So I'm just going to left click on it and then left click into my drawing. And then once I select that label, I can just click on the short text, and I will say that this is my example. There we go. I can change the text style, so the color of the text and the font. However, I'm not going to be able to do any kind of box or anything around it. It's just going to be the text on its own. So depending on what kind of information you want to put in your drawing, you might have some different options. The last thing that I want to show you here is this leader with text. This is a cool tool. You can left click to place it in your drawing, and then you can point to something. Okay, so there's going to be different things here. So whatever I'm pointing to, it's going to generate that information. Okay, so maybe I want to point to the wall. It will generate that wall information. Now, this will also generate information from your actual Speedrack extension products. So when you use this leader with text, you can actually click on those different products and you'll get some different information there. Now you can select this and you can actually go into the text editor here. If you decide that you want something different, maybe we don't need to know the thickness of this wall. Maybe we just need to know the height. We can adjust our text, click OK, and now that's what's going to show. Okay, so we can adjust it if we don't like what is automatically applied here. All right. Next, if we go down a bit, we can get to our 2D drawing tools. So if you need them, we do have 2D drawing tools available here for you. So we've got things like lines and arrows. We do have revision clouds available as well. Notice that these are all nested tool groups, and so you can right click to choose what type of annotation you're making here. So double check that you're using the tool that you actually intend to use here. That is only going to apply. So the question is, does that apply to just that one leader with text? This is only going to apply to the one. They're all individual. But you could do something like make a copy and add that wherever you need it. And these are movable, so you can say, it's actually this wall over here. So a couple ways that we can kind of shortcut it. Okay, so there are all of your 2D drawing tools. A couple things to note. in your arrows and in your lines, there's the individual and then there's segmented lines. So these are going to be individual segments. And then there's a grouped line. So this one will all be snapped together. So just kind of be aware of that if we have a grouped line. Also, when you're making lines or arrows, when you want to end, because this isn't super intuitive, let's say that's where I want my end to be. I need to end my command here. So by pressing escape or by swiping left, that's how it will actually place it in my drawing. So this one has stretch nodes in between each of the line segments, okay? But this other one with all blue dots, this is going to be similar, but it's going to be independent segments that can be moved. So the same will be true for this line. I can have individual segments or grouped segments. Okay. A couple of things that are kind of a little bit less intuitive there. Now your revision clouds are pretty simple. We've got circles and squares. If there's something that you want to call out, you're just going to left click to anchor it. And then you're going to move away from that initial spot. So you can define your length and your depth there. And you can create those revision clouds. Okay. There are some tools that are available in the tools dropdown as well. You've got a filter tool that's available. This is a little bit more advanced. This is going to control what you are seeing in your drawing. If you want to adjust your visibility here, let's say that maybe I've drawn all my architecture and I don't want to see my walls anymore. Maybe my walls are kind of getting in the way of my view. I can go ahead and turn off my architecture here. You can see what category things are on by hovering over them with your detailed tooltips on. And that's going to be this button right here. So if I hover over my wall right now, well, let's do a dimension because that's something that probably, or let's do a palette because that's something that we should have here. So if I have my detail tooltips on, I can hover over this palette and I can see that it's in the category CET, catalog symbol industrial equipment palette. Okay. So now if I find that CET, we're going to go catalog symbol. Is that what? There we go. We can turn that off. Okay. If I wanted to just turn off my walls, I can turn off my architecture. If I want to see everything, I can just click on the crossed out eyeball for everything and then turn it off again. Now I'm only controlling this with the crossed out eyeball. Using the eyeball in addition is for like, it gets a little bit more advanced. It's for exceptions to that filter kind of thing. I would recommend that you really don't mess around with that too much until you get more comfortable in CET. But if you have the need to remove some of the things from your view, let's say maybe you didn't want to see your dimensions or anything while you're space planning, you can actually turn off your dimensions. Okay, maybe you want to turn off your text. Whatever kind of control you want for that, you can. Now, this is only going to affect your drawing view, so it's you're seeing while you're drawing. Okay, this is not going to change any of the printed elements. That all has filters that are applied throughout the different viewports. Okay. Next, we are able to lock and unlock items. So let's say that I got these palettes in place here and I really don't want them to move anywhere. I'm going to be moving things around them, but I want these palettes to be locked in place. I can make my selection, press L on my keyboard, and that will lock them in place. So now I have a gray outline. I can also right click on an item and I can lock it using my menu. Okay, so you'll see here that it's giving me that same L keyboard shortcut. Okay. Now, if I want to unlock something, I can either right click on it and do unlock position, or I can press Shift L. Okay. So when it's unlocked, I will get a normal color highlight, either purple or gold, depending on your selection. So locking is really nice, especially if you have like a CAD plan. You always want to lock down your CAD plan. If you have maybe you have architecture that you've put in place that you don't want to move anywhere. If you've got specific items that you know you don't want to move anywhere, you can lock them down. And then if you make a selection that includes that locked item, you don't have to worry about it going anywhere. If you're like moving things and adjusting things, you know it's going to stay right in place. It's still going to be visible in the 2D and the 3D view, and it will still print when you do your renders. It's just not going to move anywhere. Now, the other thing that you can do is you can freeze. And when you freeze something, we can right click and we can freeze it, or we can do a Control E to freeze it. This will lock it in place, but it also makes it so it's not going to show up in any of your renders. This actually takes it away. The reason why you might want to use freeze is if you are working on a very large project and maybe everything on this side of your project is completely done. You can make a big selection and you can freeze it, and then you can continue to work on things over here. And what that will do is it will make this easier for CET to work with because it's not having to generate everything on this side of the building. Um, that is a good use of freeze to kind of help speed CET up if you're running into a situation where you've got like a massive drawing and things are really kind of starting to slow down because you've got such a large drawing. Freeze can be very, very helpful for that. Just notice that you do have this gray outline, and it will not show up for you anywhere unless you unfreeze it. So you can right click and then you can unfreeze or press Control E to unfreeze it. Anything that is frozen will remain frozen even if you close the drawing and reopen it. However, if you use a filter to kind of filter that view, your filter will automatically reset every time that you open CET. Okay, so we've got another exercise. For this one, because we are getting close to the end of the day here, I'm going to have you kind of work on this one on your own. I am going to skip straight into PDF and image import and AutoCAD import. But these are things that I would love for you to work on when you get a moment. So it's just practicing placing dimensions in your drawing. That's something that you're going to do really, really frequently. Adding a revision cloud, and then adding some kind of note, either a text box or a label. And then also, you can try locking and unlocking symbols and freezing and unfreezing symbols. There is one really nice tool available as well for when you're working with freezing items. Let's say that I froze a handful of different items in my drawing. Maybe I don't even realize that I froze something. Sometimes if it's little things, you might not even notice, and maybe they get covered up, so you don't know that something is frozen there, right? It can be difficult and tricky when you start to use freeze. So something that's really good to know about is this unfreeze all. Okay, so that's in the object drop down and then unfreeze all. That will make sure that there is nothing in your drawing that is frozen. That's kind of like a good safeguard just to make sure that you double check that there's nothing randomly frozen anywhere in your drawing. The filter is going to be found in the tools drop down right there. You got it. Perfect. Okay. All right. So let's talk about importing PDF images and AutoCAD. So I'm going to show you an example of importing a PDF image. Hopefully, you don't have to do too much of this because working with the AutoCAD plans is a lot easier, but I know a lot of us deal with not so perfect situations a lot. And so let's say that somebody gives us a PDF to use to space plan on top of, right? Not ideal, but it is workable, and I'm going to show you how to do that. So in the Tools component tab, we have our image and text section, an image and files. We can actually load an image. So I'm going to create a box here with this load image tool. So I'm just going to left click to anchor, and then I'm just going to pick a spot to stop. I'm going to be scaling this, and so I don't need to worry about how big my original box is at this point. Once I've got the box made, I'm going to double click to select my image. Okay, so I'm going to double click here, and then I'm going to find my image. So let's find, see if we can find some, uh, let's do a PDF here. Sorry, guys. Gotta dig a little bit to find it. There we go. Okay, so I've got my PDF here, and this is going to be for like an office space, but bear with me. So let's say that this PDF is some PowerPoint that some architect or some, some designer created, and we're going to be working on this first floor. If I wanted to bring in this whole PowerPoint page, I could just click this page and click insert. But I only want the image that is on this page. So instead of having all of this extra junk with it, I'm going to click images. And that's going to rip all of the images out of this PDF for me. So I can bring in the image itself instead of having to deal with all of this extra junk. Give that a moment to pull out the image. Then I'm going to find the image that I need and click insert. And that will put that image in my drawing for me. Now, when I get this image into my drawing, I cannot trust the scale. And then I also want to call out, notice that even though it looks like it's empty space here in these rooms, my cursor is blue. Okay, that is because when we bring a PDF into our drawings, it's like a big sticker on our ground. When we work with our CAD plans, it's going to be much nicer. But when you work with PDFs, it is like a giant sticker. So just be aware that if you click anywhere in what looks like empty space, it's actually going to select that PDF and it's not going to free up your cursor. Now, when you bring in a PDF to space plan on, there are a couple of things that you want to do. You can show it in the 3D view, and that will show it here for us. That's really nice. And then we're going to measure and scale it. Now, this particular PDF image doesn't have any kind of actual dimensions in it. If you have actual dimensions, you want to use a dimension. But because I have a doorway, I'm going to go ahead and use a doorway as my measurement tool. I can use this Activate 2D option to make things snappable. That's going to make my lines here in my 2D or in my PDF snappable. So when I use my measure and scale button, I can actually snap to the ends of my doorway here. So I'm going to assume that this doorway is going to be 3 feet. So I'm going to left click on one end and then left click on the other end. And right now it's only showing as 11.5 inches. What's the actual length? It's asking me to input the actual length. So I'll say this is going to be 3 feet. Press enter. And now if I zoom out, I can see that this has all been scaled. Once you've scaled it, you can lock the position by clicking on the lock position button. And now that's locked in place. So even if I left click and try to drag it around, it's not going to go anywhere. Okay, so now I'm able to start space planning on top of that PDF. Okay, so not the most ideal, but it is workable, it is usable, and we can measure and scale it, which is fantastic. A lot of times it's kind of rough to work with these PDFs because scaling can be problematic, but with that measure and scale tool, you can really, really get it to be how you need it to be. Okay, so that's importing a PDF image. Hopefully you don't have to do a ton of these, but you can do them. And here are the tools to do that. So now here's the more important one, AutoCAD import. Okay, so this is something that most of us are going to use all of the time. So let's kind of dig into this here. So when you want to import an AutoCAD plan, you're going to be in your Tools extension. And then in your Tools extension, we've got a CAD section. So from here, we're going to click on CAD Settings. And this is going to open up the CAD Settings dialog window. And on the bottom, we can click this Import New button. So from here, we're going to navigate to wherever we have our actual files saved. Let me dig around here and find my find my training. There we go. Find my actual CAD plans. Let's go here. There we go. All right. So let's say that I've got this CAD plan that I want to bring in. I can go ahead and click Import New, navigate to wherever that CAD plan is saved. And it's going to give me some information about where it's saved. It'll give me some file sizes. And then I'm going to get a little notification here if there is no 0 point in my drawing. Okay. Now, what that means is that I have not selected my origin here in CET. So CET does not have a natural 0 point. I can place a 0 point in my drawing by using this tool. So I'm going to just give it a 0 point anywhere in my drawing. And this is now going to be my zero for uh my X and Y and Z axes, okay? Again, CET does not come in with a natural 0 point. So now we're giving it a place to reference from. When you draw in AutoCAD, everything is based off of that origin. And so wherever this was drawn in relation to that 0 point in AutoCAD, that's where it's going to appear in CET for us. No, you do not have a CAD plan to pull in. This is just all going to be a demonstration here for you. If you need a CAD plan that you want to kind of practice with, I can go ahead and send an email out with that. Just go ahead and shoot me a message and I can get you an example CAD plan if you need one to play around with. But any CAD plan will work for you. Now, once you get that in, it's showing up as not inserted. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to close out of that. And now that I've got this 0 point in, I'm going to do it one more time. And you'll see now I no longer have that warning saying no 0 point found. It is showing up as not inserted because I haven't actually added it to my drawing yet. I can choose how I want this to appear. So I do want to show this in my 3D view as well. So I'm going to go ahead and add that in. If I want to adjust the scaling here, I can. And then I can also work with the different layers. And if there are different XREFs that I want to include or exclude, I can choose them here. This particular CAD plan doesn't have any XREFs, but if it did, they would be listed here as well. Now, one thing that's nice with the layers is we can actually select all of the layers and we can control their colors. If you want to have all of your colors be the same, you can quickly select them all, click on the color, and make them one color. This is really helpful because when you're transferring from AutoCAD to CET, a lot of times we're working with a lot of neon colors that are hard to see on a white background. So changing them to a darker color can be really helpful. So now once we've adjusted our properties, however we want to adjust them, we can go ahead and click Insert, and that will put this CAD plan in our drawing for us. There we go. All right, so now we've got that CAD plan in the drawing, and we can see it in 3D as well. So one thing to keep in mind here is that you can turn layers off. So if there's layers that you know you don't need, you can control them here. You can turn them off by hiding them here. So if there are particular layers that you don't need, you can absolutely do that. And then you can also hide layers here as well. So maybe let's say that we don't need any of these outside layers. I can go ahead and click this hide layers and I can hide them this way. So depending on how you want to work with your different CAD plans, you have some really good options. Now, when I look at the quick properties for this CAD plan, I have some things that I want to double check. I do want to make sure that Activate 2D is on. That allows me to snap to my different points here. I can lock my position. That makes it so I'm not going to be able to accidentally move this around. Highly recommend that you lock that position. And if for some reason you need to, there is the measure and scale here. I would hope that coming from AutoCAD, you would be able to trust the scale. But if you know that this is not to scale for whatever reason, there is that measure and scale here as well. So you can measure a certain point to another point and enter in the actual value if you do need to do that. You do also have that scaling option within the CAD properties themselves. So a couple different ways that you can work with that, but this can be nice if you are having a trouble with the scaling if something comes in at a very weird scale for you. The other thing to look at here is this 2D position. Always make your 2D position front. This makes it so if you add architecture on top of this, you're still going to be able to see those CAD plan marks. So for example, if I add a wall here, maybe I wanted to add a wall kind of in this area, I'm still going to be able to see where this column lives. If my 2D position is set to mid or back, after I add architecture, you'll see that it covers my CAD plan. That can make it really difficult for when you're adding windows or doors or things like that, because all of that information is going to be underneath your walls. So just something to kind of keep in the back of your mind, you do want to set that 2D position to front. Now, there are some best practices to talk about when you're talking about AutoCAD plans. You do want your file size to be 3 MB or less to avoid any kind of slowdowns in CET. You saw that one that I just pulled in was 3 MB and it's working just fine. But this is kind of the best practice. If you have the ability to work with the CAD plan, there are some best practices for working with the CAD plan in AutoCAD as well. So removing hatching, purging, checking your drawing limits. These are ways that you can reduce that file size. The smaller that file size is, the easier it's going to be on CET, and it's going to be easier to work with in general. Okay, so that is AutoCAD import. I know it's really kind of a quick walk through with that. There is one other way that you can import AutoCAD plans, and you can also do this with PDFs as well, but you cannot do just images. It'll be the whole page if you do it this way. But the other way that you can bring CAD plans in is you can actually just drag them straight in. So let me pull up a CAD plan here on my File Explorer. And let's say that I've got just a small CAD plan here. Um, I've got just a small CAD plan for an office. I can actually just drag and drop it straight into CET. So if I'm not concerned about needing to export this back out to AutoCAD or doing anything other than just maybe specifying some product, I can actually just drag and drop it right in. When I bring something in, I can go into my settings here by clicking the settings button, or I can double click on the CAD plan itself, and that will open up all my CAD properties. So I can still work with them the same way. So if I wanted to show it in my 3D and maybe I wanted to change my layers to, let's change them all to black so I can see everything really nicely, something like that. And then I can still do that, activate 2D and lock position, set it to front. There we go. And now that's all ready for me to use. Okay, so you can drag and drop. Best practice is to do that import new and then work with your properties here before you really bring them in, just to kind of make sure that your scaling is correct. That's the best way to do it. But if you need to do something really quick, you can just drag and drop as well. All right, guys. Well, that wraps up our day one topics. I know it was a whole lot. So, make sure you got your coffee for tomorrow. Tomorrow we are going to be going over the Speedrack extension. So that's exciting. We're going to talk about drawing walls. Then we'll look at the Speedrack extension. We'll go over some reusable files and how you can use those and favorites. All right. Well, thank you for being with me here today. If you want to review anything from today's class, it's going to be available in the Academy. It takes a couple hours for it to upload, but it will be available there in the same spot that you found the class link today. If you navigate to that same area, you will then get a review or watch recording option after it uploads. So thank you. And if you have any questions, feel free to email me, or you can save them for class tomorrow. But thank you for all of your excellent work today, and I look forward to seeing you guys tomorrow.